address in our language. Montenegrin. Dobro večer, poštovani gosti, poštovani prijatelji, uvaženi gradonačelnici, uvaženi pripadnici diplomatskog kora, dragi gosti, predstavnici Friedrich Ebert Stiftung fondacije i naših partnera, uvaženi ambasadore Felten, gospođu Schönefeld. Želim sve da vas pozdravim na otvaranju Balkan Integration Foruma 2022, našeg tradicionalnog okupljanja u Crnoj Gori, koje smo započeli negdje još 2013. godine. Ovo je 6. okupljanje jer smo imali te 3 godine pauze koje su bile uzrokovane različitim problemima, najviše onim vezanim za COVID, ali svakako naše 6. okupljanje će ponovo okupiti zvaničnike iz regiona, visoke zvaničnike regiona, stručnjake iz oblasti evropske integracije i euroatlantske integracije sa prostora Zapadnog Balkana i Evropske unije. Ono što smo željeli 2013. godine kad smo započeli Balkan Integration Forum je to da upravo ti ljudi koji misle o Zapadnom Balkanu i koji rade za Zapadni Balkan imaju na neki način set poruka koje će poslati našim prijateljima i u Briselu, ali koje će biti upućene na sve adrese koje se bave pitanjima Zapadnog Balkana. I čini mi se da smo u tome poprilično uspjeli svih ovih godina, jer ako vidite neke od tih naših poruka, a za jubilarnu 10. godinu, sljedeće godine ćemo napraviti jedan cijeli pregled svih preporuka koje smo imali od 2013. do danas, ali kada stavite malo, kada bacite pogled na te preporuke, vidite da sve ono o čemu smo pričali 2013. i 2014. godine se, nažalost, ostvarivalo i neke stvari o kojima smo govorili tih godina su još i dalje aktuelne. A aktuelne su zbog više razloga. Aktuelne su zbog toga što ni sa naše strane nije bilo dovoljno aktivnosti u našim zemljama koje bi ubrzale put evropske integracije, ali nažalost ni od strane zemalja Evropske unije, ni institucija Evropske unije nije bilo dovoljno želje da se taj proces ubrza. Koji su to sve razlozi, pokušat ćemo i ove godine da razgovaramo o njima, da ih definišemo i da osmislimo set preporuka kako da se ti problemi otklone. I oni problemi koje mi imamo kod kuće i one probleme koje imamo naravno i u strukturama Evropske unije. Mislim da za te probleme ima rješenja, a posebno ima rješenja kada uzmemo širi kontekst u kojima se oni događaju, a nažalost taj širi kontekst je postao mnogo lošiji nego što je bio 2013. godine kad smo započeli. A zapravo svi vidimo i o čemu se radi. Dakle, tada smo ipak imali jednu međunarodnu zajednicu koja se zasnivala na koliko toliko održivom međunarodnom poretku i barem smo tako mislili na održivim dugoročnim rješenjima kada su ti odnosi u pitanju. Imali smo i neku perspektivu razvoja odnosa između Zapadnog Balkana i Evropske unije u mnogo pozitivnijem tonu nego što je to danas, ali sve se u međuvremenu izmijenilo. Agresija Rusije na Ukrajinu je promiješala karte na način možda koji nismo očekivali, ali koji ne mora biti i nužno negativan za zemlje Zapadnog Balkana. Zašto ovo govorim? Kažem, zato što se nadam da je najzad u određenim strukturama Evropske unije sazrelo mišljenje koje smo mi zastupali svih ovih godina, kažem, u zadnjih skoro 10 godina, a to je da Zapadni Balkan mora postati integralni dio Evropske unije. Što prije, to bolje. Zbog toga što ukoliko to ne budemo mi, ukoliko Zapadni Balkan ne bude integralni dio Evropske unije, nažalost, ostaćemo polje uticaja za one negativne sile koje ne misle ništa dobro ni Evropskoj uniji, ni Zapadnom Balkanu. Ja se nadam da ćemo i nakon dobrih diskusija koje ćemo imati ovdje na različitim nivoima, doći do nekih rješenja i preporuka kako da ubrzamo taj proces i kako da dođemo do onog puta koji će ipak sve ono što se dešava već skoro 20 i nešto godina između Zapadnog Balkana i Europske unije ubrzati, tako da makar vidimo neku perspektivu u nekoliko budućih godina. Da li će to biti Crna Gora ili neka druga zemlja, ostaje da se vidi. Ja se iskreno nadam zbog čisto sebičnih razloga da će to biti Crna Gora, ali svakako da je neophodno da makar jedna zemlja iz Zapadnog Balkana dobije tu novu energiju, taj novi impetus i da krene što prije i da na neki način postane zemlja koja će pokazati da je taj proces živ i da se može ukoliko se sprovedu unutrašnje reforme. Ali da ne dužim mnogo, imamo puno stručnih ljudi, puno eksperata koji će govoriti i zvaničnika danas i sjutra na ove teme i siguran sam da će svako od njih imati puno toga da nam kaže. Drago mi je da su sa nama naši prijatelji, gospodin Peter Felten je predstavnik Njemačke ambasade, Njemačke zemlje čije fondacije već dugo godina djeluju na prostorima Zapadnog Balkana i zaista mijenjaju stvari vrlo konkretno na bolje u različitim oblastima, da ne idemo previše duboko u eksplikaciju svih tih aktivnosti koje fondacije iz Njemačke imaju na prostoru Zapadnog Balkana, ali zaista želim i da se zahvalim i gospođi Schonefeld, predstavnici, odnosno šefici Ureda za Crnu Goru i Srbiju, sa sjedištem u Beogradu, dakle, predstavnici fondacije Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, na nečemu što nije samo donatorski odnos između organizacije i donatora, već je jedan partnerski odnos koji njegujemo već skoro 2 decenije između Evropskog pokreta u Crnoj Gori i Friedrich Ebert Stiftung fondacije, ali i fondacije Dijalog za Sud Europa dijalog sa sjedištem u Sarajevu kao dijelom, dakle, integralnim dijelom Friedrich Ebert Stiftung fondacije. Zajedno pravimo, kažem, nešto što je možda nije jedinstveno, jer sličnih konferencija i sličnih okupljanja ima, ali ja zaista mislim da smo za ovih skoro 10 godina uspjeli da napravimo nešto što je autentičan i prepoznatljiv vid komunikacije između eksperata i zvaničnika zemalja jugoistočne Evrope. I nadam se da ćemo i u buduće to i nastaviti. Ambasadore Felten, zamolio bih vas da nam kažete nekoliko riječi.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Radulovic, liebe Frau Schönefeld, representative of the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, Excellencies, dear colleagues from the Diplomatic Corps, honorable mayors, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to congratulate the organizers, not only of this event today and tomorrow, but of the whole series. I've been in Montenegro only for 3.5 months, but I have heard that your fora, and we are already in the 6th, have the reputation of thinking a little bit beyond the horizon of day-to-day work. And I think sometimes this is really necessary so that we do not get lost and work only in the short term. And the recommendations you were talking about, I think they are being read and they are carefully being taken into consideration, and they are definitely helpful. Honestly speaking, I was a little bit surprised about the title, Lucky Winners or Lucky Losers. No question for me. I mean, winners, full stop. But I will come back to that a little bit later. Anyway, it's very, from a German perspective, very timely, this event, on the one hand, because it's just 2 weeks after the Berlin Process Summit, which I think gave some answers to the questions you were raising as to the commitment of partners with regard to EU accession of Western Balkans countries. But I would also briefly like to touch upon the other event. COP27 is in its decisive phase now. And when we talk about winners and losers, we need really to broaden the horizon, because the one big challenge mankind is facing currently, I believe, is the climate change crisis. And this is what we should all focus on. This is what will in the end determine the future of human life on Earth. And this is where we all need to do more, all of us, in close cooperation, because global problems cannot be solved by individual countries individually. And if we don't do that, then we will all be losers, and unfortunate losers, so to speak. And all the more so, I think it is really sad and despicable that the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, this war which has brought so much suffering over the population of Ukraine, and which Russia is currently actually turning into a targeted war against the civilian population of Ukraine. This war which has brought so much economic hardship to so many people all around the world, and this war which has provoked an energy and a global food crisis, that this war of aggression risks to distract our attention from focusing all our efforts on the one big issue which will determine our future, which indeed is climate change. But inadvertently, I believe Putin's war has also had some positive side effects as a wake-up call for all of us. I think it will give a boost to our efforts to reduce dangerous dependencies from certain countries, to diversify energy sources, save energy, use energy more efficiently, and speed up the green transition towards emissions-free renewable sources of energy. In short, to free ourselves much faster from the dangerous dependency on fossil fuel deliveries. And Putin's war has reminded us that we cannot take for granted a world order which ensures peace and prosperity just through diplomacy, cooperation, and exchange, but that we need to constantly defend this order. And we are very happy to see that most countries of this region, and very strongly so Montenegro, stand by Ukraine, strongly advocate for the rules of international law, reject a world order where the stronger can simply impose its will on the weaker with brutal force, who support cooperative approaches, regional and multilateral cooperation, and who support the understanding that cooperative approaches make everyone better off, are mutually beneficial, while the friend-enemy logic and unilateral use of force makes all of us poorer. I'm deeply convinced that those choosing the other side or are ambivalent in their positions on these fundamental questions in the end will be unfortunate losers. And the fact that most countries of the region share this approach and have joined EU and NATO in imposing restrictive measures and sanctions on the aggressor shows me, on the other hand, that we have a strong set of shared values, which is the basis for the Western Balkans countries joining the European Union. Ladies and gentlemen, let me come back to the Berlin process and the summit on the 3rd of November in Berlin. I think it has strongly demonstrated the will of all the 6 Western Balkans countries, despite serious internal and bilateral differences, to move forward on the path of regional integration and do so jointly, that is, all 6 countries, and based on the EU acquis, and therefore in support of early EU accession. Let me mention the 3 mobility agreements which were signed and which are a decisive step towards building the common regional market. And that one will be highly beneficial for all. And we really encourage all 6 countries now to proceed to early ratification, so that the 3 agreements can enter into force as soon as possible. Let me mention the Declaration on Energy Security and Green Transition, which was adopted at the Berlin Process Summit. It's a powerful commitment of the 6 Western Balkan countries to maximize the benefits of cooperation and interconnectedness in the energy sector, and to accelerate transition to a completely emissions-free energy sector. And if you read the declaration together with the annex, in which the EU and Germany and other Berlin Process participants make a strong, tangible and quantified commitment, a strong and credible expression of solidarity and support in the current energy crisis, and of support to the transition of the Western Balkans towards emissions-free energy, then we have a very strong signal that we want and will address key aspects of climate change and energy security together, the countries of the Western Balkans, the EU, and all like-minded champions of green transition. Let me also mention the Youth Culture Fund, which was set up in Berlin at the summit. It will strengthen the cultural exchange between artists of the 6 Western Balkans countries and thereby help bridge divides, increase understanding, and bring people across the Western Balkans closer together. And let me mention the German initiative for a joint partnership for strengthening cyber resilience in Western Balkans, which was warmly welcomed by the 6 Western Balkans heads of government at the Berlin summit. We will initiate the process of cooperation through a meeting of all the Berlin process partners in January to see where the interests and where the needs in the field of cyber resilience lie. And we are very happy that with the signing of a letter of intent yesterday between the government of Montenegro and Slovenia and France, a very strong element of this cooperation in the field of cyber security has been laid, which offers a lot of perspectives for this joint approach that is needed. All these initiatives taken together, they breathe the spirit of cooperation and of the understanding that key issues and global issues can and need to be addressed jointly if they are supposed to bring about tangible progress for all. And we think there is renewed and unwavering interest of the 6 Western Balkan countries to choose EU membership as the preferred framework for European cooperation. And I can assure you that there is renewed and unwavering interest of the European Union to welcome all Western Balkans countries in their ranks. So in this perspective, ladies and gentlemen, I think there can be only one answer to the question included in the theme of your conference, Western Balkans and the EU, lucky winners or lucky losers. No doubt, individually for each country and collectively, lucky winners. Thank you.
We hope so, Ambassador Felton. I deliberately didn't want to talk more about the Berlin process as one of the greatest regional supporters of this initiative, but tomorrow we are going to mention for sure some not some, but excellent achievements of the Berlin process that we had so far. But now also regarding lucky winners or lucky losers, our idea was, because international relations became, unfortunately, some kind of gambling these days. So you never know what will come out tomorrow. But we are here at least to give our some kind of our ideas how to put back this international situation back into the track of normality, not of gambling. So here I would like, at the very beginning of the conference, not at the end, as it goes usually, to thank to our partners, Friedrich Ebert Stiftung and Dialogue Studos Europa, and staff in your offices, especially Ivana Račić from Friedrich Ebert Stiftung Belgrade and Harun Cero from Dialogue Studos Europa, as people who were really give their best for the success of this conference. And today with us we have Madame Kirsten Schönefeld, who is the head of the office in Belgrade of Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. Please.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, dear Excellencies, dear Mayor Vukovic, dear mayors, dear Mr. Radulovic, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to greet you this afternoon on the behalf of the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. Thank you for mentioning this. We have a great partnership. We are carrying out the Balkan Integration Forum since a couple of years. And I would like to greet you in the name of our regional office from Sarajevo and in the name of the office in Belgrade, which is also serving for Montenegro. So it has become a tradition that we carry out the Balkan Integration Forum. I'm here for the first time since I just took over this position. But actually, looking a bit back on the history of the integration of the Balkans, the Western Balkans of the region, into the EU, this has also become, let's say, a tradition. So I was thinking a little bit back, and I brought one quote that you might know, which is, "The prospects of membership of the EU is real, and we will not regard the map of the Union as complete until you have joined us." And you might know this quotation, which is from Chris Patton in 2003, ahead of the summit of Thessaloniki, which is more or less the time when I was also starting being professionally engaged in this matter. And we have then witnessed the integration or the membership of Bulgaria and Romania into the European Union. And I would say, unfortunately, now 2022, Western Balkans are still on the way into the European Union. But thank you very much for mentioning, Ambassador Felton, also the recent initiatives of the federal government of Germany. We are very happy that the government has relaunched the Berlin process. You have mentioned the different aspects that have been discussed in the Berlin process now in Berlin, the different agreements. And I think this is really a very important step that the government has made, and we're very happy that also Chancellor Scholz has personally again expressed his support for the EU integration of the Western Balkans. This, in my, or also in our regard, is part of what we call the Zeitenwende, which on the one hand, of course, we're dealing with the Russian aggression in Ukraine and our common European response to this aggression, but which is also, for me, very much linked to the EU integration of the Western Balkans, because I believe the promise which the European Union stands for, which is to bring long-lasting peace on the continent, can only be achieved if the Western Balkans is part of the European Union. And then, also to ask this question, so I think we will all be lucky winners in the end, and we will continue walking this path together. And looking forward to this discussion in these 2 days and hear more about different aspects of our of this path. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Schonefeld. Thank you very much. And for this short introduction, I would like to ask Mr. Gaidelaini, moderator of the next panel, to take my seat and to start with the first panel and to invite our first panel speakers.
Great, we have the go-ahead for our first panel, the title of which has been a bit of a head spinner for me, as it often is. Whenever I'm dealing with a topic, I find I get very confused, and it takes me some time to get into it. So I'm delighted to be joined by 3 mayors from cities in this region who are going to help me get my head around this particular panel and its title. As you can see, have we got it on the screen yet? Our title name? I don't think we have anyway. So this panel is Faster and Smarter Cities for More Efficient Left, Connecting Ideas of Freedom. And we have a video contribution from the Mayor of Tirana, Erion Veliai, but more importantly, in person, we have 3 mayors from cities in this region. We have the mayor of our host city, Ivan Vukovic, and we have mayors of 2 cities, which I have profiled in my work in Monocle magazine, because I should add I'm BBC correspondent for what used to be Yugoslavia, plus Albania. My name is Guy Delorme. I also write for Monocle magazine and broadcast for Monocle 24. And that has a lot to do with issues of urbanism. So mayors and what they do with their cities, as you know, very much within my remit and my interest. So we're joined by the Mayor of Skopje Center, Gordan Simonovski, and also the Mayor of Rijeka, Marko Filipovic. And I'd be delighted if you would join me up here now. Thank you very much, Marko. So the piece we did on Rijeka was actually quite recent, so I'm in Marko's good books for the minute. The story I did on Skopje was a long time ago, during the whole shenanigans of Skopje 2014, and I imagine that, Gordan, you're still dealing with the fallout from Skopje 2014 and everything which went on with that. And Ivan, we have only just met, and I've been enjoying Podgorica properly for the first time, and I was wishing I had a bicycle, such were the beautiful shaded bicycle lanes running through your city. So I'm looking forward to getting to know Podgorica better as we go along. Skopje and Rijeka, I consider myself an old friend of both your cities. So there we have it. We have, in effect, in the title of our panel, we have labelled you as mayors of the left. And is this how you would see yourselves? And I think if we could go from the end, Marko.
Well, first of all, of course, thank you for the invitation to speak here in this forum, because I think that the sharing of good ideas is always a good idea. And I think that as the mayor of the city, governed by the Social Democratic Party since practically independent of the Croatia, so more than 30 years, I consider myself as a left mayor, and I try to do that implementing the policies that we implement more than 30 years now. I was a deputy mayor for 8 years, so we had the elections last year, so I'm a mayor about 1.5 years, and of course that I'm proud that Rijeka was the European Capital of Culture and emphasized some of the politics that we emphasize in our city, especially the policy about welfare for all our citizens, of course our social program, and definitely the title of all the European Capital of Culture was Sport of Diversity. So all the minorities that are in the city celebrated, of course, this huge title for us and the biggest cultural event in the, I would say, history of Croatia. And for us, also the themes that were covered under the European Capital of Cultures, which were migration, water, because we are on the salt water and on the salt and sweet water, because we have a river in our city, and the name Rijeka is, of course, translated to English is a river. So, and the third one was migration, water, and work. Work definitely as a city that promote and was built on the industries after the Second World War, definitely is something that needs to be discussed in these modern times. And with the great opening of European Capital of Culture and the ending of this opening with singing of Bella Ciao, it was a message to all Europe that we stand for.
I think we know what Rijeka's like, really, don't we? It's not really much of a secret where Rijeka's political sympathies lie. And you know, as a citizen of Liverpool myself, it's something that I definitely recognise. Skopje, on the other hand, would you see that, Gordan, as a natural fit with ideas of the left?
First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Gordan Simonovski. I am Deputy Mayor of Municipality of Centar, Skopje, Republic of North Macedonia. The Mayor sends his
Yes, I promoted apologies. You, didn't I, Gordan?
Yes, thank you. That flatters me.
I'd take that if I were you.
Oh, yes, definitely. And but the Mayor is sending his sincere apologies for not being able to be here. Definitely, you can feel the change, particularly in the center of Skopje, throughout the years. I can really the overall situation, the current situation, which we find ourselves, which is produced by, first of all, the COVID pandemics, also the war aggression, which is somehow far away from us, but yet very near. Not speaking only in terms of geographic, in geographic terms, but also in somehow direct and indirect, let's say, affection, which situations which affect our everyday habits and life. All the countries seem to have learned not to always put economic considerations at first, but instead dedicated themselves to the health and improvement of the living conditions of all citizens. Taken in mind that the situation is still ongoing, although the COVID pandemic is slowly subsiding, but it's still around us. You can always feel the economic pressure in negative way, which applies directly from COVID and also the war aggression.
I thank you very much for that, Gordon. Ivan, I think it's fair to say if at one end of the scale we have Marko, who is very much a veteran of his city's politics. You had a life which was outside of politics for a long time, until the past 4 years when you've been the mayor of Podgorica. Are you again happy with this description we've got of you being a mayor of the left?
Mayor of the left. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here, and I'd like to congratulate our friends from the European movement in Montenegro, also Friedrich Ebert Foundation for insisting on having this very important conference every year. I think the more time goes by, the more we understand how much we need these opportunities to, as Marko said, exchange ideas on various issues. When it comes to the city and our ideological orientation, so to speak, well, I think we would use this classical typology of, this positioning ourselves along the two axes, cultural and economic. I would say we definitely belong to the left side of the political spectrum. On the one hand, we insisted when it comes to the cultural aspect to keep the city what it has always been, proud of its anti-fascist history, being open, being albeit small, cosmopolitan, being proud of its multi-ethnic heritage, resisting the rise of populism, extreme right-wing ideas and such, and I think we've been very successful in that regard. At the same time, when it comes to economic policies also, I think the way we choose our priorities, especially in the context of the global pandemics, we've tried to really reach out to everyone who needed our assistance, and unfortunately we're talking about a vast number of people. Also, we focused on our priorities when it comes to infrastructural development on those parts of the city which had been lagging behind for years and decades. So we've secured the access to fresh water. I mean, we still talk about these things in the Western Balkans in the year of 2022 to a few thousand people, or improved road infrastructure, or provided financial support to people who are renting their houses. And we really try to be there for them, and I'm very proud of that. Whether that's going to continue, I'm not sure, because we recently had local election. We came first, but it's not going to be enough for us to continue, which probably indicates that the way we imagine how the city should develop, and in ideological terms as well, does not necessarily correspond with the overall situation. So it remains to be seen how the new local authorities position themselves vis-a-vis these challenges in the given ideological context.
I know it's very difficult to remove yourselves, because you all are members of prominent national political parties, as well as running your own cities. And it's complicated, isn't it? Because if we think about the situation in Croatia, obviously Rijeka being this I mean, it sticks out like a sore thumb in a way, doesn't it, in Croatia, let's face it. It does run against the grain of the most powerful and popular national political party and a lot of the nationalist sentiment that we've seen over the past 30-odd years. I mean, I can move on as well to the individual situations in North Macedonia and here in Montenegro as well, but how does that affect you, Marko, when you're attempting to govern your city from maybe a perspective which is radically at odds with the prevailing national sentiment?
Well, that's a very good question. We should divide this question into maybe two. One is this political, let's say, discussion with the current government. And the other question is how we collaborate in a project manner. So for the project manner and everything what is happening now in Rijeka, which was maybe started even before, I could say that we collaborate okay, I would say. So all the biggest projects that are undertaking now in Rijeka, considering the infrastructure, railroad infrastructure, road infrastructure, port authority infrastructure, everything is going, I would say, okay. But when we come to the discussion about, of course, politics, then we have a different views on Croatia. Not maybe on strategic level, because Croatia will join the Eurozone or will join the Schengen regime from the 1st of January next year. So this is something which also the Social Democrats are in favor. But when we discuss about social issues, about helping people in the crisis and dealing with some issues that are, for example, the right for abortion, some other human rights or minority rights, then we have a different approach, of course.
And in your city, Gordan, I mean, we've had this whole issue of identity in North Macedonia. Everything from the name of the country, which is the most strikingly obvious factor, but as I alluded with this Skopje 2014 project about the antiquization, this idea of what it means and what it meant to be Macedonian, and you find yourself at the very heart of that.
Me personally, speaking about the new face of Skopje, new face of the center of the Skopje, to be more precise, because Skopje 2014 was meant and is mostly is meant for the face of the center of the city. All the new faces of the facades of the buildings are changed, as you said, as antiquization and some, let's say, other aspects of our past, which I don't really approve. That's my personal opinion, let me say. And pretty much the town, the city of Skopje has just changed radically. Who's been before 2014, let's say before 2008, when the project started, 2009, can see the huge difference in the city. But it is how it is at that moment. That was the political side of the city. It was meant to be maybe also, you know, changing it in a way of a tourist attraction, like a change of the face of Skopje, calling back to the old, ancient Macedonian times. But then, in the last 5 years, a lot of other changes happened. The governing party changed, and here with that came, let's say, some big and tough changes. The change of the name was one of them, maybe most somehow painful for the people, but at the end of the day, it's when you talk to people, it's not about what our name is and that geographical distinction of the region of Macedonia, but the economical stability, social security, and these are the most important parts of our government at the moment, which in consideration with the local authorities, with the municipality of Centar, it is on a high level of approach and communication. So yes, you can see a lot of difference in the past several years in Centar, but as you know, we strive for EU standards, and pretty much every our thought is and every our action is aiming towards EU integration. I would also like to mention the modernization of municipality of Centar in terms of the smart city concept. The process of globalization and European integration has defined a new model of functioning of municipalities where local authorities in cooperation with European and regional partners have a crucial role in improving the standard of living of the citizens through the exchange of experiences, joint learning and application of the best practices for ensuring quality service to the citizens. And this is our primary and first concern, to have satisfied citizens, which have clean streets, which have, let's say, parking.
This is the basics.
No parking issues. You see, municipality of Centar is one big transit municipality. So we have a lot of other municipalities coming through. It's a cultural center, it's the institutional center, all the institutions, cultural buildings and everything is centered. Right, so we have a big problem with the parking, and by implementing this smart city, which will take up to 2026, it's in plan to be implemented in full, to help the citizens in making the life easier, making the access to the community, to the municipality easier, and to have better response from us as a municipality and from the council of the municipality.
I mean, this is what everybody wants in the end, is for their daily lives to be enjoyable wherever possible, for streets to be clean, for the facilities to be there when they need them. And I was thinking about the situation we have in the UK, for example, where local governments have been starved of money over the past decade. If you look at it, the funding has gone down from central government to local governments by about 50%, which is obviously catastrophic in terms of how our cities in the United Kingdom look these days. Again, you've got an issue, I would say, Ivan, where you have national politics intervening on your local plans, because the party that you joined to become the mayor of Podgorica is having a moment with some of the electorate, isn't it? And this is now impinging on your ability to do what you need to do.
Yeah, that's about right. We, as a party, lost the parliamentary election in 2020. The party had previously ruled continuously for 30 years. Which
a lot seems to have happened in 2 years, doesn't it?
Yes, yes.
I was just scratching my head then, thinking, was that election really only 2 years ago? And it was, wasn't it?
Just imagine how we feel here. So again, you know, that is something that we kind of hoped would be a contribution to the future democratic development of the country, or say normalization of certain political practices, because as a political science professor back in the days, I had issues to explain how come that Montenegro is a democracy in the Western Balkans, which had never saw turnover in power. You know? So at least now, when it comes to political theory, it's easier, but everything else is much harder. I'm afraid, and I wouldn't. I mean, if we look at the title of the previous panel, I would not have too many reasons to consider ourselves winners in any regard. Not saying that because I belong to the party that lost. quite the contrary. I thought, as someone coming from academia, that again, that could really be the beginning of a new phase of political development. But pretty much in practical terms, all the hopes and aspirations of, you know, common ordinary people who wanted economic standard to improve, who wanted a better functioning state, you know, rule of law, EU integration to kind of intensify the process, have been betrayed. So I found myself 2 years ago in a very specific situation, running the city as then the high official and later on vice president of the former ruling party. Nonetheless, dealing with local politics, as my friends know, you don't really have too much space for maneuver, because on, you know, daily basis you need to focus on practical issues, problems and such, which is why in a centralized system as we have in Montenegro, I tried continuously to reach out to the new government. I wrote to the prime minister on several occasions. I asked him to meet, because the government is by default the most important partner of the capital city in Montenegro. That meeting never happened. Towards the end of his term, when he was asked when...
Which prime minister? We've had two this year.
The previous one, Kliro Kapic. When he was asked, how come that you communicate so poorly, and when do you expect to see the improvement in that sense, he said, when we have the next local elections and these guys lose. So that tells you everything you need to know about the quality of communication. So pretty much for almost a year, I couldn't sit and talk to any of the government representatives when it comes to the matters of importance for 200,000 people living here, including infrastructural projects and such. Some of them funded by our friends from the EU and individual member states. Let's say with the formation of the minority government that we still have, things got better. Not perfect, but better. But I think that we're still far from, you know, a democratic standard that we have, I think, even in Croatia, which is a newcomer when it comes to the EU, where certain things, certain interests are not called into question or depend on who is in charge where, you know. So there is a consensus, at least at the very basic level. Here, we don't have this consensus, which is why, again, we suffered a lot over the last year and a half. Yet again, we managed, I think, to keep the city on the right track. So in that sense, I guess that in Montenegro, it means a lot if you have the same party being represented at the national, at the local level, unfortunately.
We've seen alternatives, though, around the region. I mean, if we draw the region a bit more broadly, but certainly within Croatia, you've obviously got Možemo, or Zagreb as ours in Zagreb, so Tomislav Tomašević, not representing one of the main established parties. In Slovenia, Ljubljana, Zoran Janković, again, not really participating in parliamentary politics at the moment. We've got elections there this coming weekend. There are other models. Is it, if you're on the left now in politics in this region, and I'm thinking again, Ne Davimo Beograd in Belgrade, not in power, but they've made a difference. They've certainly pushed a conversation. Does this mean we need to be maybe thinking beyond the main national parties if we want to make a difference in cities as leaders? Well, what do you think, Ivan? Because it's obviously, you know, very much, this is affecting you at the moment, I think, more than Marko and Gordan, actually.
Well, I think this last experience of the local election indicates that people find it difficult to differentiate things in that sense, you know. So no matter how hard you try to focus their attention on local issues, and no matter what sort of campaign you run, because we really try to kind of stay away from national politics, and you know, came up with an inclusive platform which was, to my understanding, wide enough for, you know, people of diverging political views. At the end of the day, a huge percentage of people would still think of you in the category of your party affiliation, which is a problem, I think. I mean, part of the reason, I guess, why we did not do so well. But I mean, let's see what lies ahead. For the moment, it seems that the next mayor of Podgorica will be a member of the political party that is not at the moment represented at the national level, because it's a new party. If this situation that we have at the national level, further prolongs, then we will have to have some kind of cohabitation, between the government and the mayor's office. But in a long run, I think the more of these initiatives we have that you're mentioning, Možemo, Ne davimo Beograd. I'm not talking about the quality of their policies. I'm just talking at the level of political phenomena. I think the more reasons we have to be optimistic, because these are indicators of the political emancipation of a society. People, just being focused on what's closest to them in a way. So they can have their sympathies and antipathies when it comes to the national level, but they can choose differently at the local level. So I personally look forward to this kind of development in Montenegro if it ever comes.
Is that something you're thinking of in North Macedonia as well?
Not exactly. I think that at the moment, as you know, the current situation is that our government is leftist also, but on the elections on level of the municipalities, they really suffered a big defeat. But I would like to say that the inter-municipal communication is on a high level. There is no such negative outcome of the elections yet, but I think that is supported by the government. The government is really supporting municipality of Centar, and I think that the communication is on the highest level possible. We have every kind of support. It is practically known, and it is normal because it's a central municipality. So at the end, I think that we as a local authority have really good connections to the other municipalities also.
And Marko, when the Social Democrats are in power, which is not that often, but it does happen on a national level, do you find it easier in Rijeka to push your programs through?
Well, it depends, of course. We come to power every decade, I would say. It's happening in Croatia, but it's still happening. And this is something that gives me hope that it will happen again. Are we going to collaborate with some other left movements inside the country? Definitely we are going to collaborate with them. But those initiatives comes and goes. They need to prove themselves. When they are elected in the local communities, especially in our capital, Zagreb. I think that now they have 4 years to actually do what they promised on the elections. So if they do so, and if their capacity of doing their promises on the elections will be good, then if we collaborate with them, definitely we have a chance on the next parliamentary elections to see the left or central-left government in Croatia again. But I think that the change of the national politics lies in the cities. If we look at a broader perspective in the Southeast Europe now, we joined the city of Rijeka and Zagreb joined the initiative of the mayor of Budapest. European Free Cities, I think it's called, and he brings together in Budapest last year, and this year the initiative was held in Prague, the mayors of Prague, of Bratislava, of Budapest, of Istanbul, of Rijeka, of Zagreb, and all these mayors are, let's say, in opposition of current governments. So the change will definitely start in the not just in capitals, but in the biggest cities in the countries of the region. And this is the territory in which the Social Democrats or other left parties or initiatives need to be active. And I think that definitely the left movement in the region have a chance to win the elections. I think this is not something that it's only a dream, I would say, because now definitely if I look all the countries of the, let's say, not just Western Balkan, but also the countries in our neighborhood, definitely Slovenia maybe is the leader of these movements that are happening, not just in Ljubljana, where Mayor Jankovic is definitely going to win in the first round in the next Sunday, but also on the national level. Always some movements are happening, and after winning the elections, on the other elections, they don't win even the census to enter the parliament. So this is definitely something that is going to happen in all the countries of the region, but I think the main parties, I'm speaking now for Croatia, Social Democrats and HDZ, which form the current government, will be fighting for the majority in the parliament.
As you know, we like our fresh faces in Slovenia. And I mean, I did think actually about forming a political party. I was going to maybe call it the Nice Guy Party. And you know, I thought you want a fresh face. It doesn't get much fresher than this. You know, I can barely speak Slovenian, so that might have been entertaining. But when you do have a nationalist government in power, or a government which pushes nationalist messages, which you do in Croatia, and there's been issues with nationalism of varying stripes here in Montenegro. Also, it's always been in the discourse as well in North Macedonia. How does it affect you, Marko, at city level, when you've got those messages being pushed nationally? How does that affect what you do?
Well, definitely from the local level, it's very hard to fight, of course, with the national level, because the level of decentralization in Croatia is very low. I mean, in Croatia, only 12% of the public money is spent on the local level. And when I say local level, I think of all 428 municipalities, 128 cities, and including the city of Zagreb, which is spending 6% of this 12% of money which is spent on the local level. So we are not just a centralized country in the means of the central government, but also we are centralized in a meaning that the capitals of our countries, Belgrade, Podgorica, or Zagreb, or Sarajevo, or Skopje, or Ljubljana, definitely the greater part of the economy is based there, and this is something which affects the other cities in a huge amount when we are talking about the budget. And definitely then is very hard to, let's say, fight with the national government if they are not of our political spectre. But sometimes is even harder to fight with your own guys, because you know then you cannot oppose them politically. Even if they are doing something which is on project level is not okay, or you are doing something else on the local level. For example, I would say just a few examples. Maybe Rijeka is proud of civic education in our elementary schools, and this is the project we are very much pushing on the national level. And the other cities with, let's say, progressive government is taking our model. We are giving it for free. In a sense that it also can be implemented in their elementary schools. And this is very important because we are influencing the young people in the system, and creating the people that are going to be involved in the democratic processes in their own cities, and they are going to be involved in the decision-making process and everything else. And this is something that we are pushing, let's say, in all the cities that can accept that. But from the national level, we don't have an answer about the way how to implement that on the, let's say, national scale for all elementary schools in Croatia. And this is something that you need to fight from the city to the city, to the mayor that I know, or people in the Rijeka know, and so on and so on. So this is the fight from door to door, as I would say, or from city to city.
Is that something that you recognise as well, Gordon, that when your own guys are in power, it can even that can be a special kind of problem of its own?
I would say that on some level maybe, but mostly the support we have it's in a huge amount. I can be honest about that. Pretty much it is a problem between now the other municipalities, which are in communication with the government, and which I wouldn't say from their behalf, but they might have some kind of problems in cooperation. But in our case, we have a strong and fruitful relationship, so I wouldn't say that we have a problem for all at the moment. So as you know, the elections are far away. I'm talking about government elections.
You never know, North Macedonia. You say it's far away now.
Well, it's maybe. I'm talking about the regular ones. But when talking about those nationalistic ideas and promotions from the opposition at the moment, you can see that that the leftists, as we are really focusing on EU integrations. As you can see, apart from the change of the name of the country, we entered NATO, and we are eagerly and pushing every single aspect of life in order to achieve that European level of life for the citizens, for the country itself.
I would imagine it would be a problem you would like to have at the moment, having people of your own party in power.
It's a little bit different to what Marco described, because the system that we have in Montenegro state administration is much more centralized, and I would get frustrated every once in a while as a mayor for not being able to deliver on things that people would expect us to do, but we had no jurisdiction. So they would say, look at this healthcare unit that's falling apart, or look at the state of the surrounding area of a school, or kindergarten, or we have no power to influence these things, because we don't have jurisdiction in healthcare or education at any level. So I think at least for the capital city, Montenegro, I'm not sure about the rest of the country, because municipalities have lots of challenges financially. Human resources are not so easy to secure in such a small state. But when it comes to Podgorica, I'm absolutely certain that a much more decentralized model of governance would benefit all the people living here, which is why it was even more important to have a high level of understanding with the government, which was not there. And back to your question, it would have been much easier. It wasn't perfect, to be completely honest. Even before 2020, sometimes you had to explain the necessity of act fast to certain people in the government, because I think the dynamics at the local national level is very, very different. Because again, what you do forces you to be much more pragmatic, and because you're closer to the problems, you're closer to the people. There's no buffer zone, so you need to act swiftly. So sometimes I will be, not particularly impressed with the feedback. Well, we would at the end of the day get where we wanted up until 2020. Then the problems would begin. But back to what Marco pointed out, over the last 4 years, I witnessed great cooperation in the region at the level of capital cities, and that is something that I think and I hope will be preserved, because things are changing. We have, except for Mayor Jankovic, back to the 2018 when I started. We have different mayors in Sarajevo, we have different mayor in Belgrade, different mayor in Zagreb, different mayor in Skopje, different mayor in Pristina. But somehow, despite all the challenges and tensions in the region and imperfect bilateral relations, to say the least, we managed to kind of keep ourselves together and to really share valuable insights and to help each other. We borrowed a lot of ideas from Skopje. We're all learning from Ljubljana. Then, there's a lot of, common projects that we're working on. There are these global or European initiatives such as the Pact of Free Cities that Podgorica also joined. So I think we've represented the region in a good way. And I think we have shown, we have demonstrated that had it been for people running, dealing with politics at the local level, I think we would have maybe more reasons to look for, being lucky winners in the years to come.
Well, you mentioned all the regional cooperation. I think now is probably a good time to introduce the missing panelist, if you like, Erion Veliai, who is a friend of this forum. The mayor of Tirana couldn't be here, but he has been able to share some of his ideas with us over a video, which I hope we can play now.
Hello from Tirana to all of our friends in Podgorica convening this week. I'm so sorry not being able to attend. I would have loved to. It just so happens that it's Tirana's Liberation Day, so I'm going to send you a greeting from Tirana. Hopefully I can come another time, but even better if you can come and visit us in the last month of Tirana being the European Youth Capital, or maybe next year where Tirana will be the European City of Sport for 2023. It's been a crazy time, and I think in these crazy times, with this crazy Putin inflation because of the war, with all the stories from the pandemic. In Albania, we even had an earthquake. It has really been a challenge to be a mayor or any public leader. And in these crazy, insane times, the ground is ripe for all types of populist rhetoric, all types of conservative ideas, and all types of sovereignist rhetoric that encourages people to go outside of the norms, to break a lot of the visions that we've had in the past. Now, I want to stop here for a moment. What did the past teach us? Well, in 2003, the Thessaloniki summit encouraged all of us to think of the vision of the European Union. And the ideal was that within our generation, within a decade, we'd be members of the European Union. Well, 2003 has passed. We're almost in 2023. It has not materialized. Finally, there is some momentum. For the first time in the Western Balkans, in Tirana, on December 6th, the European Union will convene here with the heads of state and heads of government, and also with the 6 Balkan aspirants to join the European Union. But the context is completely different from the idealism and the passion of 2003 and the Thessaloniki summit. Just last week, Albanians experienced a wave of racism and populist rhetoric from a lot of the British members of parliament, the British elite, and some of the leaders of the Brexit fiery debates. So we were able to experience firsthand that for a handful of votes, or for a handful of clicks, or for a handful of headlines, politicians are saying all kinds of insane things. And then you realize that the lowest level of public service, or at least the closest in contact with the public, are the mayors. And when you listen to this rhetoric, of course you get, it's supposed to get you agitated. Populism is there to provoke all the devils within everybody's nature. And then when you hear that, marauding Albanians, criminals, coming 30, 40,000 a year to the UK, destroying our way of life. The city of Tirana alone, if you dissect the facts, welcomes 30 to 40,000 people every year because of this inner migration. So when you put the facts together, and when you realize the magnitude, it really is a joke, and we're not talking here about invading armies, but we're talking here about a trickle when it comes to the context of a country of 60, 70 million, then you realize that populist rhetoric is designed to challenge our way of life, to challenge our norms, to challenge the way we service the public. And I think this is a big dilemma on how mayors can communicate. You can do two things. One, succumb to the populist rhetoric. The other one is to confront it. And we've chosen to confront it. You confront it with facts, and you confront it with deeds. I often get the very temptation to deal with a lot of this rhetoric, even here in Albania. And I think the temptation is very high to engage in some of these filthy debates when it comes to discussing or arguing with the lowest denominator. I think the big challenge for mayors and local leaders is to keep the moral high, to keep the discourse in an intellectual level, but also in a tangible level of results that people can see in community every day. When people see how public space can change through this multi-national, multi-ethnic, multi-religious culture, when they see how the public discourse gets enriched, when they see the labor market in a city like Tirana, when we have 144 nationalities, a lot of the construction work, a lot of the service works are now going to foreign nationals. And when we realize that what populists are saying about us elsewhere in the West is something that we should confront also internally with people coming from Asia or Africa, then you realize that this is a cycle. It's a cycle of nations, it's a cycle of economy, and it's also a cycle that is expedited by this context of war and all these challenges that are happening in Europe at the moment. We are committed to be an epicenter of public discourse, of an open dialogue, of an open society in the city of Tirana. This year, as the European Youth Capital, we had over 1,000 events, mostly to demystify the fact that the foreigners or the strangers do not dilute our identity. As a matter of fact, they enrich our identity, they enrich our society, they enrich our labor market. And if even you look at the discourse, it doesn't matter whether it's the mayors in Ukraine or the mayors in the UK, like the mayor of London. You can see that the mayor's rhetoric is one of inclusion, one of working together and one of finding solutions. In the national level, especially in the West, you see the rhetoric of the right, and it doesn't matter if it was the extreme right in France or in the UK, it's the politics of finding the blame, not finding the solution. And I think this is the biggest debate we have at the moment. Mayors and local leaders specializing on solutions and others specializing on who to blame. So in this context, I think there's some fantastic ideas going on. We just founded B40, which is the Balkan 40 top mayors, part of a coalition of mayors who seek solutions and try to learn and help each other. It was founded in Istanbul. I think the second meeting will be early next year in Athens. And the fact that Balkan mayors are now often communicating or getting stuff done even better than some of our governments, mine excluded, because the Albanian government has been extremely open on many initiatives like the Open Balkans and others. But there's many governments in the Balkans who are very reluctant to cooperate, to open up, to look forward into the future. And I think mayors are much easier, or at least much better, and trying to find solutions and trying to work together. And I think this is a fantastic platform for governments to see and find out that xenophobia and racism, sovereignism, a lot of the silly thinking, living in silos and isolating ourselves are stuff of the past. And I think in that regard, mayors carry the torch. They do so in Montenegro with some fantastic mayors, and many of the mayors in the region are really front runners in maintaining open societies, in debunking a lot of the myths and urban legends about the right wing and about the toxics that are entering in our discourse. And my final remark is, no country is immune to this type of populism. If you look at what happened 6th of January in the US Capitol, and you'd think this was a scene from the Balkans in the 90s, then you realize that there's no vaccine for populism. It just takes constant medication in the form of information, debunking fake and alternative facts, believing in science, and trusting on mayors and officials who are in the first line of democratic defense to deliver services that people can touch, they can see, they can feel as tangible results of what modern governance is. I wish you all the best, and I look forward to either coming back to Podgorica, beautiful Podgorica, or welcoming all of you to Tirana in any of the occasions. On the November 28th, Tirana will be the epicenter of celebrations for our 110 years of independence. So it's our Independence Day. Dua Lipa will be here with a big concert. So you are all very welcome to come visit, or anytime during the next year when we are the European City of Sport 2023. Fala, thank you very much.
So I think that means we all get tickets for the Dua Lipa gig. It's free anyway. Well, there we go. We've all got. It's easy to say it. You can all come when it's free, isn't it? But there we go. Are you all members of the B40? This the mayor's group that Arion Veli was just mentioning. So you're all in this B40 group. It's funny because I lived in Cambodia for 8 years, and in Cambodia, B40 is something completely different. It's you probably had them in this region as well. You did, didn't you? They go bang, or well, they make other things go bang. But I digress. Do you buy what Arion was saying there about this idea that the mayors can be this not vaccination, but this constant medication against populism? Do you think, Marco?
Well, definitely, the mayor of Tirana pointed out some interesting things, and I think that always his optimism is great, because as I mentioned before, as he also mentioned, the front runners or the gatekeepers of democracy on the local level, and fighting with the alternative facts and so on, especially in a time of crisis. And I have a feeling that we are always living in a time of crisis. I mean, it was a Second World War. After that, it was a Cuban crisis. Then it was a economical crisis. Then it was a COVID crisis. Before it was a Spanish flu. Then it was then before that is the First World War. Now we have the energy crisis. And practically what is going on in the world, the economy of size of Spain is invading economy of size of Slovakia. And all world is shaking. We are all living in a time of uncertainty. We don't know what's going to be the price of gas, of food, of everything. Inflation is, I mean, 10, 12%, 20%, depends on in which country of European Union are you looking for. And I think that I don't know, or we all know who is benefiting from that. Because the hugest price of this conflict is going to be paid by Ukrainian people, and after the Ukrainian people, the price of this war is definitely going to be paid by the member state of the European Union. And this is something that all the citizens will pay. And when we calculated that, for example, in the price of the public lighting in Rijeka, it was 1 million euros last year, and it's going to be 3 or 4 million euros this year. So who is going to pay this price? The citizens is going to pay this price. And this is something that is largely in a, I would say, coalition with this populist movements, and I don't know what the winter will bring. We have a protest now in some member states of the European Union, and we will see how the situation will be in just a few months.
Do you also, Gordon, see yourself as a kind of medic against populism?
Let me say yes. But as you know, the municipality at the moment is really focusing on the social aspect of living. As we know, the energy crisis, which is maybe at its peak level, maybe the peak level it will come in the near future. For just a picture example, if let's say a year ago our electricity bill of the municipality was $1.5 million, now it's 4 times that. Not to mention that we are slowly implementing that smart city concept by installing LED lights, which are energy efficient, environmentally friendly, and also aesthetic looks, and in all ways better than standard lighting. What we are trying to do is improve, from one side, the living of the citizens, but on the other side, we still have to be careful about spending, and we have to use that concept at the moment of turning on the lights later during the day, cutting them early in the morning, and also that system of one working, one not, and so on, so in order to have a reliable budget, because most of the money saved, we are really trying to help our citizens with social packages and kind of help in the culture, sports, supporting sports teams, the schools, primary schools, also investing in getting the kindergartens. So basically, it's a hard fight. It's a really challenging fight. But at the end of the day, we are really managing it as we should. The mayor is doing the best he can, of course, with the help of the government. So practically, that's our main focus at the moment.
And here in Podgorica, Ivan, we've got a good old protest tonight. I mean, you know, we want to talk about populism. It's flying at us from all angles here, really. Do you try and, you know, stand above this, get involved in it, confront it, participate in it? What's your stance?
Well, the whole idea of the last local election in Podgorica was to stand up against populism, in addition to standing up against those who have a completely different vision of the future of the city. But populism was a new animal, so to speak, you know, so it was an addition to the deeply entrenched kind of political cleavage that we've been living with in this country for the last 25 years. So we had a choice to try to run this race, and it's the race to the bottom, or to try to keep, as Erion mentioned, moral high ground and to speak honestly with the people, to try to explain the challenges and to, you know, put in perspective, you know, things that we could for sure provide for them, right? Not to talk, you know, to speak about fairy tales, but to say, okay, this is a country that is in huge problems socioeconomically, politically, and we think that, you know, for the time being, this is, you know, as much as we can promise. And then, you know, contrary to this kind of narrative, you had people going around promising whatever may come to one's mind, from, you know, increasing salaries as local representatives, which is already nonsensical, to you know, allowing people to legalize their informally built houses without paying a cent to the city, you know, promising that we're going to have, you know, trams in Podgorica in a year from now. So that may be sympathetic, you know, but when it comes to this economic populism, I think it's very dangerous. Unfortunately, this was attractive enough for a significant percentage of people, which is why, at the end of the day, we will have a new local government. I'm saying that it's dangerous because, as someone who comes again from academia, had a chance or years to learn about similar movements, I know that there can be only one outcome, right? Luckily, we live in a small country which cannot cause too many problems to the region, but we know what happens when you have people in times of great socioeconomic challenges and uncertainties promising miracles. That happened in Podgorica. I'm afraid that awakening will be very painful. Another reason to be worried is that at the national level, you see the same trend, which has been you know, initiated 2 years ago, continuing or even intensifying. So yesterday we heard about the new budget proposal, which is absolutely crazy, right? So we're planning a budget of 2.8 billion, with 700 million euros missing. We don't know whether we'll be able to borrow a single euro, you know, because we had borrowed 1 billion a year and a half ago, and we need to repay 2.5 billion over the next 3 years. In addition to that, the government is promising to raise salaries in the public administration. So that, again, tells you everything you need to know about the state of affairs in Montenegro at the moment. We're protesting tonight because, in addition to this kind of behavior, you have an open attack of the ruling majority on the constitutional order. You are, you know, a month ago in the parliament, we had an attempt to strip away the president's power, you know, based on a simple majority decision. You don't need to be a legal constitutional expert to know that it's It's unacceptable. So there are a lot of things that are fundamentally wrong in Montenegro at the moment, many of which have to do with the idea of populism, you know, promising easy solutions for complicated problems. Unfortunately, again, when people are faced with these kinds of challenges, they tend to, you know, accept what seems most tangible for them, and most tangible is certainly the income that someone would promise to be raised, even though there are no economic, there's no economic basis for anything along those lines. So back to the question or the point raised by Erion, we had a choice ourselves whether we should try to be more populist. And you know, if you say these people have 1,000 euro salary, I go and say no, you're going to have 1,500 euro salary. But I, at the end of the day, am a citizen. I'm not only a mayor. I'm not only a politician. I'm someone who wants to, live his life here, and I care about the city and the country and the people that I've been representing too much to really, to try to make fool of themselves to that extent. Even though, sometimes it doesn't really politically pay off.
Hey, we in Britain, we're still wondering where that 350 million from the side of that bus has gone to. It was 350 million, wasn't it? It's such a lie that I can no longer remember. We are now at the end of the allotted time for the panel, but bearing in mind we started a bit late, and you don't need half an hour to drink coffee. If anybody would like to ask any questions of the mayors, I would be delighted to open the floor and let you lob in a couple. If not, there's always coffee, as I said. So any questions, please don't be shy. We didn't really even cover the sort of faster and smarter bit, although we did a little bit with Gordan, but I think we've done an awful lot of connections, and we've done an awful lot of, the challenges of operating from the left in terms of when you've got a lot of populism or nationalism or ideas from the right, or national powers and the right around. But if there's anything that you think we've missed, speak now or forever drink your Nescafe. There's one question over there on the right, if you wouldn't mind whipping the mic over, please. It's always nice to get at least one question, so thank you for that. Although I may change my mind.
Okay,
so,
standing between you and the coffee, but yeah, I'll take the risk. Bodo Weber from the Democratization Policy Council in Berlin. I just want to make more of a comment than pose a question on, what we're talking about here is the state of local self-government in the region. And to me, the local self-government is one of the key cures for the deficit of democracy in this region. As you may pointed out already, it's simply because you are closer to the citizens' basic needs and interests. So governing unaccounted is much more difficult at that layer of governance than at others. And we've seen in part of I think that's the reason why in the region you mostly got centralized political systems and very little strong local self-governance. You got them in parts of the country where they were exported as part of the ethnic conflict solution, like in Bosnia or in Macedonia or in North Macedonia and in Kosovo, but still they're not perfectly functional. But where you got them, and where you got them combined with money, that means fiscal decentralization, and I think that maybe also your experience is then for mayors and councillors, particularly for mayors, the political adversary stops to be the other parties, but the higher level of governance, irrespectively of who is governing, and even if this is the same party. So that's one point I wanted to add here. And one other observation is, and that's more a critique of our EU side, we tend to have in many years back in the EU progress reports sections on local self-governance. It has completely disappeared, and I think this is a big mistake. So yeah, I'll stop here.
Thank you. Let's have just the very quickest of responses to that. If we could just go down the panel from Marco. Any sort of comment on that, and just very briefly, please.
Well, basically, I agree with everything what was said. The fight for self-local governments in the region is a continuous fight. So we have all to give our best to higher the level of fiscal decentralization, of course, and give more power to the mayors of city councils, or the power to the people.
definitely the mayors and the city councils are still dependent from the central politics, from the central institutions, which we really strive in order to get that fiscal liberalization, and where the mayors can, and with the municipalities councils, they can really rely on their own budget, their own way of implementation of projects, and so on and so on. So yes, definitely that's the case with us also, but we are striving to for more perspective and more, let's say, self-deciding kind of form.
Well, there are certainly risks involved if you have people that are not, necessarily so, responsible and such. Then things can go the other way around. But I think in principle, it's a good idea to empower those who are closer or closest to the actual life, so to speak, problems of every day. This sort of pragmatism to go back to maybe the framework of the conference allowed for this really great cooperation that we have, even in times like these. Let me finish by reminiscing over one such moment. 2019, we also marked the Liberation Day, which is in December, and things between Kosovo and Serbia were, pretty tense back in the days. And then we had delegations coming from both Pristina and Belgrade to Podgorica, and we were wondering, about, logistics, whether we would need to keep them, apart, two panels and such. But no, actually, it worked quite well, to the point that, we went out and had great time together. And there is something about local politics really forces you to keep kind of these kinds of considerations aside and focus on what the problem really is. And I think more of this way of thinking in the region could certainly benefit everyone.
Well, I'd like to thank all of the panel for their contributions. That's Ivan Vukovic, the Mayor of Podgorica, Goran Simonovski, the Deputy Mayor of Center Skopje, and also Marko Filipovic, the Mayor of Rijeka. Thank you all for listening and participating, and those coffee machines now await.
Još jednom svima, posebno mi je zadovoljstvo da vas pozdravim na drugom panelu konferencije. U pripremi gospodin, naš domaćin Momčilo Radulović, je imao briljantnu ideju kako da spoji moje učešće na konferenciji sa potrebom da ja ne pričam previše. I naša je, kao i sva genijalna rješenja, ono je prosto, da ja budem moderator, da budem fizički prisutan, ali da težim da budem nevidljiv. Što ne znam koliko će mi poći. Što je vrlo teško ostvarivo, ali evo da pokušamo i tu novinu. Dakle, imamo temu koja je, znate, u tim evropskim integracijama i u stvarima koje se tiču evropskih integracija, ja pripadam onoj ekstremnoj manjini koje je uvijek smetala izvjesna repetitivnost, dakle ponavljanje nekih formulacija, ocjena i projekcija koje se ticale ne samo šansi naše zemlje, Crne Gore, nego i cijelog regiona, da u dogledno vrijeme bude članica Evropske unije, pa sam uvijek bio oprezan da o stvarima o kojima manje znam, a evropski kontekst je nešto gdje se možda i najbolje ne snalazim, da ne ulazim u ocjene koje bi mogle da izazovu probleme i za nas, i za mene, i za temu kojom se raspravlja. Ali večeras imamo, dakle, i koristit ćemo jedan od naših jezika, i engleski, u raspravi. Dakle, imamo drugi panel, gdje stojimo i kakav je put ispred nas u kontekstu evropskih integracija i evropske perspektive 6 zemalja Zapadnog Balkana. Imamo jedan izvanredan panel sa 6 učesnika i moja skromna projekcija je bila da u prvom krugu svaki od učesnika u nekih 10 minuta kaže svoje razmišljenje, projekciju, ideje oko toga gdje smo i kuda težimo i kako to može da se od danas nadalje razvija, a onda ćemo, nadam se, imati vremena i u drugom krugu da kroz specifična pitanja odgovorimo, adresiramo i neke posebne teme. Ono što bi, prije nego što pređemo na raspravu, bila moja želja jeste da svaki od 6 učesnika u svom prvom nastupu pokuša, ukoliko je to moguće, naravno, da jednom riječju ili jednom rečenicom da definiciju onoga što bi mogao da bude zajednički imenitelj situacija koje se tiču evropskih integracija u svih 6 zemalja regiona. Prvo i drugo, da izdvoji problem u bilo koji od tih zemalja koji on ili ona smatraju u ovom trenutku najvećim ili najproblematičnijim, kako za tu zemlju, tako i za region. Tako, uz vaše razumijevanje i u želju da sve bude kako treba, da krenemo. Imamo, nadam se, na vezi prije svih gospodina Fabijana Funkea, člana Njemačkog Bundestaga, koji nam se javlja direktno iz Berlina i želio bih prvo njega da čujem. Gospodine Funke, izvolite.
Hello, I'm really happy that I could have at least this little statement to the conference, because I'm sadly enough are not able to join you here. I hope we will see in person soon, but at least I can say some sentences from Germany and from the German Parliament to you, and that's what I'm really happy about. So for me, the Western Balkans for now are a little bit of a microcosm also of the struggles of the European Union as a whole. On the one side, we have political leaders, we have civil society fighting for the rule of law, fighting for the European values, and also fighting for standing together as Europe. On the other side, we also have political leaders that are not fighting for this, that not stand on our side, that also fall for Russian propaganda and also sometimes have financial aid from them, and so fighting for their nationalist view on statehood and also for their illiberal view on statehood. And for too long, the European leaders, when it comes to the Western Balkans, have only looked at and said that it would be great to have them in our European family, but maybe did not enough for that. And so we can see now in the Western Balkans that also the frustration is quite high. But we also see many, many people fighting for European values, fighting for European membership, and this is really something that we have to look at and that we also have to support. And the Russian war on the Ukraine has shaped things differently. We now see security in Europe, for example, completely different. And also the Russian aggression leads sometimes to new opportunities, as we see in Moldova and the Ukraine and Georgia, with them becoming candidates for the European Union. But for me, it's totally clear that the European future can only be with the Western Balkans as a part of it. And so we definitely have to strengthen our view on that, and we have to strengthen this process and find paths for the Western Balkans to join the European Union. And on the one hand, we have countries that are going forward, that have a concrete path, that do very much for being part of the European family, but we also have countries like Serbia, where political leaders have to decide on which side to stand on, and have to really decide if they want to be part of Europe, or if they want to be also influenced by Russia furthermore. And finally, when we look at the enlargement process, we also have to ask the question if this frame we are working in is suitable for the future. And I would say, if we look how long European decisions took in the past, that we also need reforms in the structure of the European Union, and that we need more qualified majority votes to ensure that the European Union also is capable of addressing the issues of the future and also of the present. And so I think EU enlargement could only go with also reforms of the European Union, and this is something that we have to take our hands on. So in the end, I would like to wish you also a good conference. At least I hope we will see each other maybe in another context. I hope my thoughts addressed you, and for me it's really important that we show a perspective for the Western Balkans, that we work together on shaping the future of a Europe where rule of law and human rights are an essential part, and I think this is something that we only can do together as a whole, with you, with the European Union, and the future of Europe.
Dobro, da zahvalimo gospodinu Funkeju na njegovoj snimljenoj poruci, u kojoj između ostalog pomenuo ono što može biti relevantno za sve zemlje Zapadnog Balkana u budućnosti, a to je između ostalog i način donošenja odluka u samoj Europskoj uniji i mogućnost da se izbjegnu blokade i veto situacije kada se radi o svim našim zemljama pojedinačno i o svim našim zemljama zajedno. Nastavljamo sa gospodinom Milanom Aleksićem. Imam zadovoljstvo da člana Gradske skupštine Beograda i Srbije pozdravim i da pozovem da nam se obrati putem video veze.
Dobroveče, gospodine Vlahoviću, i naravno dobroveče svim drugim učesnicima koji su i s vama tamo uživo, a i koji će se javiti putem video linka. Pre svega da vas pozdravim i u ime Demokratske stranke, a i u ime Gradske skupštine, s obzirom na to da sam i predstavniku, kao što ste rekli, Gradskoj skupštini grada Beograda, i s tim u vezi da kažem da evo Demokratska stranka se polako, ali sigurno vraća kao važan faktor u politički život i Srbije i grada Beograda. Posle ovih poslednjih izbora mi smo ostvarili vrlo dobar rezultat u koaliciju koju smo bili. Imamo sad 9 odbornika u Gradskoj skupštini, koja broji 110 mesta, i imamo 10 poslanika u Narodnoj skupštini Republike Srbije, i naša namera jeste, i čini mi se da dobro uspevamo u tome, da se profilišemo kao jedan stožer oko kojeg će se okupljati druge opozicione, pre svega progresivne snage, kao jasna brana trenutnom zapravo desetogodišnjem naprednjačkom režimu koji je na vlasti u Srbiji. Ja ću probati evo da se uklopim ovih 10 minuta koliko nam je ostavljeno. Ja ću govoriti naravno i u ime Demokratske stranke, ali i iz pozicije nekoga ko se godinama zapravo bavio evropskim integracijama Srbije kroz svoj angažman višegodišnji u civilnom sektoru, posebno s obzirom na to da sam dugi niz godina pratio uslovno napredak Srbije u ključnim poglavljima pregovaranja sa Evropskom unijom, to su poglavlja 23 i 24, koje obuhvataju važna pitanja, reformu pravosuđa, borbu protiv korupcije, osnovna prava, migracija, azil, borbu protiv organizovanog kriminala. Pre svega želim da kažem da Demokratska stranka, to je važno da se čuje, jasno stoji na poziciji članstva Srbije u Evropskoj uniji, ali takođe i na poziciji opipljive uslovno europeizacije, kako smo nekad to zvali, unutar same zemlje, što znači da se zalažemo za delotvorne reforme u ključnim poljima, kao što su poštovanje ljudskih prava, vladavina prava, borba protiv korupcije i kriminala. Šta više, Demokratska stranka je u maju ove godine donela i deklaraciju o posvećenosti evropskim integracijama i mi smo u tom dokumentu pozvali Evropsku uniju da snažno i nedvosmisleno podrži ponovno uspostavljanje urušenih evropskih vrednosti u Srbije, a takođe mislimo da je važno da se Srbija iskreno pridruži i pozicijama Evropske unije po pitanju rata u Ukrajini. Pristupni pregovori trebalo bi da Srbiju vrednostno približe EU, ali je tokom pregovora naravno važno ne samo da se formalno napreduje kao Uniji, nego da se zapravo suštinski implementiraju vrednosti Evropske unije i one vrednosti za koje se mi zalažemo. Pripremajući se za ovaj panel, listao sam neka svoja istraživanja od pre 10 godina i našao sam neke formulacije koje, nažalost, možemo da izgovorimo i danas, i tada je bilo evidentno da je proces evropskih integracija u zastoju, da je oslabljen konsenzus unutar same Unije oko toga dokle treba da ide taj proces proširenja, koje sve zemlje treba da se uključe u Evropsku zajednicu naroda, i tada je bilo jasno da su reformski procesi u našim zemljama na Zapadnom Balkanu u zastoju. Dakle, sve to važi i danas. Nažalost, prošlo je 10 godina, što znači da, imajući u vidu iste te ocene, da je, dakle, situacija danas mnogo gora. Nije možda nužno da se vraćamo na to kako je tekao taj proces pridruživanja zemalja regiona ka Evropskoj uniji i kako on teče danas, ali ukratko možda eto da podsjetim na ono što je Srbija uradila i gde se Srbija danas nalazi. Nakon onog Solunskog samita iz 2003. godine, Srbija je već naredne godine, odnosno Narodna skupština, usvojila rezoluciju gde je jasno iskazala nameru da se pridruži Evropskoj uniji i to zapravo postavila kao svoj glavni spoljnopolitički i strateški cilj. Iako se formalno u tom smislu ništa od tada do danas nije promenilo, nažalost u praksi vidimo da Srbija nije učinila mnogo na suštinskom približavanju Evropskoj uniji i politikama Evropske unije. U formalnom smislu mi smo 2009. godine podneli zahtev za kandidatski status, to je odobreno 2012. Onda smo formalne pregovore počeli 2014. godine, ali smo prva pregovaračka poglavlja, i to upravo 23. 24. kao najvažnije otvorili tek 2 godine kasnije, dakle 2016. I do danas, iako su među vremenu, kao što znamo, i promenila ta metodologija pristupanja, pa sad imamo te takozvane klastere, međutim suštinski se nije mnogo šta promenilo jer su ta poglavlja, 35 poglavlja, samo grupisana po tim klasterima. Dakle, do danas smo otvorili 22 poglavlja, 2 su privremeno zatvorena, što znači da ako bismo nastavili ovim tempom, da je za 6 godina zatvoreno samo 2 poglavlja, trebalo bi nam još decenije i decenije da završimo čitav pregovarački proces. Ono što je važno da kažem je zašto je to tako. To je tako zato što vlast u Srbiji zapravo sve vreme autoblokira, da tako kažem, evropske integracije, iako to ne sme glasno da kaže. Znači, nema suštinskih promena niti napretka, već se radi samo o tako da kažem, šminkanju i tapkanju u mestu. Iako je i ministarka za evropske integracije, gospođa Tanja Miščević, koja je nedavno postavljena na tom mestu, koju izuzetno cenim, rekla da je glavni cilj Srbije i dalje ulazak u Evropsku uniju. Međutim, i sama Evropska komisija u poslednjem ovom izveštaju o napretku iz 2022. godine jasno kazala da, iako je vlada Srbije nastavila da proglašava članstvo u Evropskoj uniji svojim strateškim ciljem, ona i dalje nije pokazala jasne akcije u praksi da to zaista i želi. Mi kao Demokratska stranka pozdravljamo ocene koje su u izveštaju o napretku i koje se odnose pre svega na stanje u oblastima demokratije, slobode izražavanja i sprovođenja izbora, pošto smo imali još jedan izborni ciklus ove godine, ali se recimo ne slažemo sa onim ocenama koje se odnose na pravosuđe, tamo su prisutne određene pohvale. Mi mislimo da što se tiče reforme pravosuđa tu nema nikakvog napretka i da pravosuđe u Srbiji odavno nije nezavisno, već služi kao prosto jedna poluga, još jedna poluga u rukama vladajuće stranke. Tu smo još mogli u ovom izveštaju da vidimo, izveštaju o napretku za Srbiju, da srpske vlasti treba prioritetno da preuzmu odgovornost za proaktivno i objektivno komuniciranje ka javnosti o Evropskoj uniji, koja je, kako se tamo kaže, daleko najveći politički i ekonomski partner Srbije. I to je jasno zašto je to potrebno i zašto je Evropska komisija to naglasila, kada vidimo i znamo da je podrška pridruženju Srbije Evropskoj uniji, a pretpostavljam da je slična situacija i u drugim zemljama, s obzirom na to da smo već gotovo 20 godina manje ili više u tom procesu pridruživanja koji se mnogima verovatno čini da je beskonačan. Dakle, ta podrška je u javnosti pala, a takođe je evidentno i da se ne razume dovoljno sama uloga Evropske unije i sam proces pridruživanja. Prema istraživanju koje sam ja gledao prethodnih dana, istraživanja Ipsosa, ove godine za pristupanje Srbije Evropskoj uniji glasilo bi samo 35% birača, što je daleko, daleko manje od, recimo, 2009. godine kada smo dobili viznu liberalizaciju i kada je za učlanjenje Srbije u Evropsku uniju glasalo čak 74% birača. Nadam se da ne govorim prebrzo, da možda se prevede.
Ne, govorite dovoljno tečno i sadržajno, ali me ovako jedno pitanje koje je neizbježno kada se razgovara sa prijateljima iz Srbije, bar za nas koji nismo iz Srbije i ne nameravamo da budemo iz Srbije, jeste da Srbija, volens nolens, pored svih poglavlja koja su svima nama zajednička, ima to, po znacima navoda i bez njih, jedno dodatno koje se tiče Kosova. A jedna od intrigantnih stvari za nas koji posmatramo krajnje benevolentno ono što se dešava u susjednoj Srbiji jeste da napravimo distinkciju ili da pokušamo da definišemo što su razlike između vladajućih struktura s jedne i opozicijonih partija s druge strane i po tom pitanju. Pa bih vas zamolio, ukoliko ste mogućnosti, vrlo kratko, mada ćemo i kasnije imati malo vremena, da kažete Demokratska stranka vis-a-vis Srpske narodne stranke kada se radi o Kosovu, ne samo u kontekstu evropske integracije, nego i uopšte, kako bi vi tu razliku, ako je ima, definisali?
Odgovorit ću na to pitanje, jer sam to u stvari htio i da pomenem u ovome što sam sad htio da kažem, a tiče se glavnih problema ili razloga zašto je pala ova podrška evrointegracijama i zašto uopšte je to pridruživanje svih naših zemalja, naročito Srbije, sporo. Prvo, mislim da je prvi problem ta nedovoljna vidljivost, kažem, Evropske unije na svakodnevnom nivou u životu običnih građana. Dakle, malo ljudi zna koliko je donatorskih sredstava Evropska unija dala Srbiji, koliko je bolnica opremila, izgradila škola, puteva i tako dalje. Našao sam neki podatak, dakle, u posljednje 2 decenije oko 3,7 milijardi evra donacija je došlo od strane Evropske unije ka Srbiji, a u jednom istraživanju Ministarstva za evropske integracije ove godine građani su rekli, odnosno prepoznali su Evropsku uniju u 38% kao glavnog donatora. Znači 38% građana prepoznaje Srbiju, ovu Evropsku uniju, a 37% Kinu. Što je vrlo zanimljiv podatak, imajući u vidu da je zapravo Kina tek na 15. mestu po sredstvima koje je dala Srbiji. Drugi glavni problem jeste što su 2 prioritetna poglavlja izgubila primat, znači 23 i 24, a sve vreme sad pričamo o 30 jedinici, odnosno spoljnim odnosima i 35-ici. I tu dolazim do ovog što ste me vi pitali. Znači 35-ica, odnosno ostala pitanja, a u slučaju Srbije dijaloge od Beograda i Prištine. I koja je sad pozicija i Demokratske stranke u odnosu na ono što je pozicija Srpske napredne stranke i uopšte na ono što je kosovsko pitanje? Mi pre svega treba da imamo u vidu da se sve vreme paralelno odvija taj takozvani dijalog između Beograda i Prištine, iako zapravo to nije dijalog, jer je uvek uključena neka treća strana, tako da nikad nije bilo direktnih razgovora i ne znamo šta bi bio ishod tih direktnih razgovora. Dakle, 10 godina imamo takozvane briselske razgovore, a da mi i dalje ne znamo, kao obični građani, ali kao predstavnici političkih opozicionih stranaka, šta je tačno sadržaj tih razgovora.
Poštovanje, gospodine Aleksiću, zbog vremena, da ste u prilici da vodite briselske razgovore kao demokratska stranka u vlasti, što bi bio vaša pozicija? 2 rečenice, molim vas.
Dakle, prvo što hoću da kažem jeste da pozicija demokratske stranke je vrlo konstruktivna po kosovskom pitanju. Dakle, mi se zalažemo za to da se to pitanje reši. Sa druge strane, mi ne možemo da se opredeljujemo prema nečemu što ne znamo šta je sadržaj, odnosno šta je sve Srpska napredna stranka dogovorila, šta je sve ispregovarala, da bismo mi mogli sad zapravo da kažemo šta je naša pozicija u odnosu na to. I ja takođe mislim da će u stvari to pitanje verovatno vrlo brzo i da se reši i da ćemo zapravo da se onda pitamo šta ćemo sa posledicama tog rešenja.
Dobro, hvala vam. To je prilično, kako bih kazao, nova projekcija, apropo mogućnosti rješavanja tog prilično kompleksnog pitanja. Hvala vam, bit će prilike i kasnije. I sada imamo Zlatka Vujovića, predsjednika Upravnog odbora CEMI-a, mog dragog prijatelja, ako smijem da kažem, i čovjeka čije analize i projekcije posebno cijenim u Crnoj Gori ovdje. Zlatko, izvolite.
Hvala, Miodraže. Stvarno mi je zadovoljstvo što sam danas ovdje sa vama i obično bi ovakva tema, odnosno naziv panela podrazumijevao da dominira puno tehničkih detalja o pregovorima i da razgovaramo gdje smo u svakom poglavlju stigli. I vjerovatno u tom slučaju možda ja ne bih prihvatio ovaj poziv jer bi tražilo puno pripreme oko tehničkih detalja. Međutim, a ja sam uglavnom nekog ko je zainteresovan za poglavlje 23 i za 24. Međutim, ja sam ipak ovoga puta opredelio da prihvatim poziv jer sam shvatio da neće biti toliko opterećen tehničkim detaljima. Zašto? Zato što Crna Gora zadnje 2 godine nije pregovarala, niti je imala, niti bismo mi sad imali neke detalje da prenesemo iz tog procesa. Ali ajde da ja to sad sam ne zaključujem kako i ocenjujem taj proces, ja ću umjesto toga samo citirati naslovnicu dnevnog lista Dan, koja je izvijestila, koji su izvijestili sa sastanka ministara spoljnih poslova u Briselu prije neki dan i naslov preko cijele strane je sljedeći. Za 2 godine Crna Gora nije uradila ništa na putu ka Evropskoj uniji. A da bi vam negdje doslikao kako to izgleda iz ugla visokih diplomata, evo makar jedne od ključnih zemalja članice EU, prenijet ću vam jedan razgovor od prije nekoliko dana koji sam imao sa visokim predstavnikom Ministarstva spoljnih poslova jedne od ključnih zemalja, koji je gledao sa velikim simpatijama da Crna Gora treba što prije da postane članica Evropske unije i da je treba podržati, da njegova zemlja više nema tako oštar stav koji je imala ranije i tako dalje. I onda ide jedna rečenica koja kaže pohvalno o Makedoniji i kaže Crna Gora i Makedonija će sada zajedno da idu u ovaj proces ravnopravno. Sad, mene to raduje zbog naših kolega iz Makedonije, jer govori o tome da Makedonija ide dosta brzo, da su spremili jedan veliki dio zakonodavstva koje je već harmonizovan i prije nego što je počeo proces pregovaranja formalno. Međutim, to govori o tome da Crna Gora ne samo stoji, nego čini mi se dosta ubrzano kreće nazad i sve bliža je bliža Makedoniji koja je tek sad zvanično počela pregovor. Što govori o tome da je ovaj naslov koji je objavio dnevni list Dan potpuno ispravan i najbolje mi je ocenio stanje evropskih integracija u Crnoj Gori. Ajmo sad malo nešto o detaljima. Mi smo izgubili 2 godine da smo tek sad formirali pregovaračke strukture. Zašto? Zato što je vlada premijera Krivokapića posmenjivala sve šefove pregovaračkih grupa, zaustavila proces evropskih integracija, a tek u novoj vladi gospodina Abazovića je taj proces dovršen bez nekakvog efektivnog djelovanja na tom polju. Znači, dijaloga gotovo da nema. Da ne govorimo o utiscima prilikom prve posjete nakon predstavnika Evropske unije, nakon formiranja vlade gospodina Abazovića, gdje je taj stepen koji se mogao u privatnim razgovorima čuje razočaranosti kako su neki ministri ih dočekali, a dočeka prije svega, da pomenemo i konkretno ministra pravde, koji je potpuno došao nespreman, koji apsolutno nije znao ni što će biti tema, a došli su veoma konkretno da pričaju o konkretnim pitanjima. Zašto sve ovo navodim? Navodim da bi pokušao na neki način da odgovorim na ono vaše pitanje početka, zadatak koji ste zadali. Da ukratko kažemo gdje su naše zemlje u svemu tome. Pa ja mislim da je ključni problem u ovom trenutku sa procesom evropske integracije, kada govorimo o Crnoj Gori, da ne postoji politička volja da Crna Gora napreduje u evropskim integracijama. To zvuči prilično apsurdno, jer u slučaju Srbije imate 35% građana koji podržavaju proces evropske integracije, u slučaju Crne Gore preko 70%. Znači, vi imate sad jednu, da kažemo, opštu podršku građana Crne Gore koja ne korespondira sa onim što rade predstavnici u vladi. Naravno, ko sjedi u vladi? Sjede prije svega dvije političke partije, imaju 2/3 ministara koje su na posljednjim lokalnim izborima u Podgorici, jedna nije prešla cenzus od 3%, a jedna je prešla iznad, znači sa nekih 9%. Kada je formirana vlada gospodina Abazovića kao jedna manjinska vlada, mjera kompromisa, mjera realnosti, ja sam po prvi put prije njenog formiranja javno podržao formiranje jedne vlade u Crnoj Gori. Nikad to nisam uradio prije toga, ali sam smatrao da treba da se to podrži javno, da trebamo svi da ih ohrabrimo iz prostog razloga što je Crna Gora dobila priliku kakva se rijetko dobija. A to je da su nam svi otvorili širom vrata ka Evropske unije i mislim da je to skoro i posjeta španskog premijera Španije, koja nije baš bila entuzijasta oko ulaska Crne Gore, dosta ohrabrila i poslala više nego jasne poruke, a da sa druge strane, vidjeli smo, nije bilo nikakve spremnosti. Zašto to kažem? Iz razloga što sam i tada, prije formiranja te vlade, iskazao jednu rezervu, a ta rezerva je bila sami sastav te vlade i strah da Srbija neće dozvoliti da Crna Gora tako brzo postane članica Evropske unije i da se bojim da će se aktivirati oni pojedinci u vladi, prije svega potpuni lojalisti predsjednika Vučića, tu mislim prije svega na Socijalističku narodnu partiju. Ono što tada nisam znao i nisam očekivao jeste ponašanje premijera Abazovića. Gospodin Abazović je dobio jedan nevjerovatnu šansu da postane najuspješniji predsjednik vlade Crne Gore, da dobijemo Crna Gora već ovo, sada bismo govorili o završnim mjerilima, jer Crna Gora je trebala u ovom trenutku da dobije završna mjerila i da praktično privede kraju proces pregovaranja kako se očekivalo do kraja 2024. godine. Ništa toga nije urađeno zbog toga što je jednostavno geostrateški to nije odgovaralo jednom našem susjedu koji ima dominantan uticaj na rad ove vlade. I vidjeli smo to i sa onim što je rađeno sa temeljnim ugovorom. Jasno je bilo kada predsjednik vlade nije htio da odloži glasanje o temeljnom ugovoru neposredno pred dolazak ministara spoljnih poslova Evropske unije u Crnu Goru, nije htio ni da sačeka nedjelju dana da oni budu u Crnoj Gori, nego je sabotirao konferenciju koja je trebala prije svega da bude omaž njegovoj vladi i da bude puna podrška. I umjesto toga u jednom trenutku smo imali 9 ministara spoljnih poslova Evropske unije koji su potvrdili dolazak u Crnoj Gori, da bi onda svi otkazali, uključujući češkog ministra spoljnih poslova koji je predsjedavajuća zemlja Evropske unije, i mi smo nažalost doživjeli kao država, što je najvažnije, ne samo njegova vlada, jedan težak poraz na diplomatskom planu. I mi smo sad došli u jednu situaciju da čekamo neku novu šansu, da se nadamo nekim izborima gdje će možda da ćemo dobiti jednu u potpunosti proevropsku vladu. Jer ova vlada nije proevropska, iako je sa tom namjerom formirana. I ja sam je tada podržao jer sam smatrao da tu šansu ne smijemo propustiti bez obzira ko sjedio u toj vladi. Nažalost, nije se iskoristili i sada ćemo da pričamo ne znam ni o čemu pričamo kad progovorimo o procesu evropske integracije, jer ne postoji ta sadržina tog pregovaranja više, niti postoji riješenost onih koji su zaduženi u vladi, a ja bih rekao ni stručnost, da jednostavno nose taj proces. Ja se sjećam perioda do 2020. godine, u sve ono što mi možemo reći DPS-u, da je dosta obstruirao neke procese kad je riječ o vladavini prava, da smo imali strahovite greške kao 3. put imenovanje predsjednice Vrhovnog suda, osporavanje nekih drugih procesa, ali na tehničkom planu je bio jedan izuzetno intenzivna komunikacija i ispunjanje. Sad više na tom tehničkom planu nema ničega. To je jednostavno sve prazno, niko se ne bavi ili se bavi u jednom minimumu, niti postoji nekakav politički, ajmo ga nazvati, naboj da se ide što brže ka evropski. Nema nekoga cilja, jednostavno se kupuje vrijeme i mi sada smo svedeni na to da se raznim zloupotrebama procedura, ustava, zakona pokušava po svaku cijenu održati na vlasti jedna vlada koja je izgubila legitimitet, koja je uskraćena podršku u parlamentu, ali koja jednostavno, s obzirom na konstelaciju odnosa, pokušava da vlada do zadnjega dana. Umjesto da kao neko ko je bio jedna alternativa i običavao jednu evropsku perspektivu ove Crne Gore, da jednostavno ubrza proces, da se jednostavno, ako nije moguće formirati vladu kao što nije moguće formirati, onda da građani, a nema ništa od toga više demokratski, da jednostavno ponovo glasaju o tome ko će o evropskoj sudbini Crne Gore, a ne da bude ključna poruka predsjednika vlade u takvoj šansi koja nije toliko dugo trajala, da je ključni prioritet Crne Gore otvoreni Balkan. I to je, nažalost, jedna bila opasna poruka koja je bila najava. Ne toliko je to bila priča o otvorenom Balkanu, nego je to bila poruka da nikom više ne vodi računa o evropskim integracijama Crne Gore, jer Crna Gora imala nevjerovatnu priliku i jednostavno treba to notirati i građani i svi oni koji se bave evropskim integracijama da smo propustili, nadam se, ne i nepovratno.
Hvala, Zlatko. Nažalost, sa vašim prilično sumornim ocjenama i projekcijama se moramo složiti. To je uostalom bio i u kontinuitetu člana stav Evropskog pokreta u Crnoj Gori, organizatora naše konferencije. Jedno potpitanje, mada ćemo se, ali vrlo kratko, mada ćemo se kasnije vratiti otvorenom Balkanu, neizbježno, u drugom krugu. Kada bi sada se regulisali stvari u Crnoj Gori u političkom kontekstu i recimo Crna Gora dobila kredibilnu posle izbora, nadamo se, funkcionišuću vladu, učinjena štetu u posljednje 2 godine, koliko bi vremena trebalo da se Crna Gora, ne samo u tehničkom, nego u političkom smislu, vrati na avgust 2020. godine? Po vašoj projekciji.
Pa gledajte, prije svega zavisi od toga da li bismo mi imali jedan veoma više nego jasan prioritet neke buduće vlade i dovoljno stručnih ljudi u toj vladi da mogu veoma brzo da ponesu taj proces. Ako bi to bila jedna snažna poruka, nema, da kažemo, kompromis oko evropske integracija, ispunit će Crna Gora sve što bude traženo, mi bismo mogli veoma brzo da se vratimo. Ali se bojim da, s obzirom na kako je trenutno stavovi javnosti i podrška političkih partija, da će biti teško formirati jednu takvu vladu i nakon izbora.
Nažalost, i ta projekcija zvuči veoma realistično, što je velika šteta za sve nas. Hvala. Nastavljamo. Gospodin Bodo Weber, naš dragi prijatelj iz Savjeta za demokratizaciju politika iz Berlina. Uvijek smo uživali i imali privilegiju da slušamo njegove prilično detaljne i precizne analize situacije u našem dijelu svijeta. Ja bih ga zamolio, naravno, u zahvalnost što je sa nama, da u svom obraćanju se osvrne kratko i na upravo završeni samit u Berlinu vezano za berlinski proces, kako bi nam otvorio kasnije u drugom krugu mogućnost da razgovaramo o korelacijama berlinskog procesa s jedne i otvorenog Balkana s druge strane. Gospodin Weber, izvolite.
Jel radi? Ok. Hvala gospodine Vlahović. Prvo hoću da se zahvaljujem organizatorima Evropskom pokretu i Friedrich Ebert fondaciji na pozivu. Ja bih ostavio berlinski proces za drugi dio našeg razgovora. Ja bih kratko se osvrnuo, pokušao na pitanje gdje stojimo u procesu EU integracije, da malo pokušam sumirati koliko kratko da je moguće koji smo put prošli onih 15 godina po meni. Ako počnem nekim polušalom kao uvod, ja bih rekao jednu konstataciju da po meni jedno što je stabilno bilo u onih zadnjih 15 godina politike proširenja, koliko je stara moja organizacija, to jeste da jedno stabilno je bila kritika moja i moje organizacije te politike proširenja. Zašto? Zato što iza nas, i tu budem jasno, mi imamo period tih 15 godina do 21. februara i period od 21. februara ove godine. Ove 15 godina, manje više decenije po, malo više od 15 godina, ali otprilike ja tu stavljam godine od 2005. 2006. je to godina kad su SAD prebacili zapadno vodstvo nad Europskom unijom. To je važno u istoriji se sjetiti. Nije Europska unija tražila to vodstvo, mi smo je dobili, htjeli, ne htjeli. To su 15 godina kontinuiteta, nedosljednosti i neprincipijelnosti u politici proširenja. I zašto je to tako? To je tako zato što mi imamo 15 godina kontinuitetu tog EU vodstva posredstvom politike proširenja koje od početka do kraja patilo od nedostatka strateške dugoročne politike. I to bazirano na vrednostni sistem, na liberalno-demokratske vrijednosti. Nismo imali strateški dugoročni pristup prema ovim alatima koji nam stoji na raspolaganju, koji po meni jesu bili i ostaju, možda ne znamo za Europsku uniju, možda za Zapad u cijelini, najjači alat i gdje postoji na svijetu za vanjsku promovisanje demokratije i vladavina prava. Nego smo mi vodili, odnosno dopustili voditi od strane birokrata na srednjem nivou hierarhiji u Brislu i u predstavnicima politiku na takozvanom birokratskom autopilotu. Zašto je to tako? Zato što ta politika je bila na neki način odjek i ogledala tih 15 godina opšte krize Zapada poslije rata u Iraku, povlačenje i SAD-a i Europske unije sa svjetske binica odbrane liberalnog svjetskog poretka. Ova 15 godina nedosljedne, nestrateške politike proširenja se je išla od dvije faze. Jedna jeste dogodna 2015-16, drugo posle 2015-16. Prva faza bila određena od takozvanog zamora od proširenja. Mi smo imali unutar Europske unije podjele između država članica oko prave politike prema regiji, a ne o cilju članstva regije. Recimo, to se vidjelo na primjer između Velike Britanije i Njemačke oko Bosne. Što je rezultat toga bilo? Ta politika birokratskog autopilota je bila jedna serija niza prljavih kompromisa sa domaćim etnonacionalističkim liderima oko demokratskih uslova, demokratskih reforma. Oni su vodili do toga da te lidere omogućeni legitimisan preko Europske unije i EU integraciju, politiku rollback do postratnih dostignuća od uspostavljanja demokratije i vladavine pravi i omogućeni jedna stvar da su lideri u isto vrijeme u praktičnoj politici djelovali antievropski i u javnom narativu sebe mogli predstaviti kao šampioni EU integracije. Mi smo povremeno imali neke inicijative više reaktivne o tim strukturalnim problemima koji su preostali u regiji iza 90. godina, koje se nije moglo riješiti čisto ovim tehničkim alatima politike proširenja predpristupnih pregovora. To su preostale statusne konflikte, recimo dijalog Kosovo-Srbija uspostavljen posle krize na sjeveru Kosova 2011. Ali opet ponavljam, kad vidimo iz dugoročne perspektive tih 10 godina, ostali smo poprilično praznih ruka zbog nedostatka dugoročnog master plana ili strateškog pristupa. Godinom 2015. i 2016. trojnom krizom, evropska izbjeglička kriza, Brexit, referendum i izborna pobjeda Trumpa, dođe do dramatizacije te krize evropske politike proširenja. I to na više nivo. Na prvoj, mi smo izgubili Njemačka među onih glavnih 4 zemalja koje su gurali politiku proširenja. Mi smo izgubili svoj partner u Velikoj Britaniji i nada da ćemo ih zamijeniti Parizom i se pokazali kao uzaludno. Znači, mi smo došli od podjele oko puta do cilja, do podjele oko cilja. I jedan od posljedica toga je bilo da za 4 godine od oktobra 2018. do juna ove godine spoj između politike uslovljavanja i demokratskih reformi i nagrade u napretku je prekinut. To je dramatičan udar na kredibilitet politike proširenja. Još gore, kroz izbjegličku krizu mi smo došli u neka vrsta promjene ovih odnosa zavisnosti. Pogotovo iz perspektive Beograda u jedan odnos u kojem u toj godini 15. Europska unija po prvi put izravno, a ne mic po mic poslažnih prljavih malih kompromisa za provokativnim nacionalističkim liderama, mi smo izravno izvozili nestabilnost u regiji, a ne obrnuto. I Beograd i drugi su shvatili da Europska unija više treba Srbiju nego Srbiju treba Europska unija. To je dramatičan promjena odnos. Jedan rezultat te trojne krize, uz toga što svi ovi vlažni snovi nacionalisti od svojih neispunjenih agenda su se vraćeni iz fioka kad je Trump pobjedio. I to nije bilo. Rezultat toga jeste, zašto kažem eskalacije, mi smo praktično prešli od malih kompromisa oko principa vrednostnih principa vladavina prava i demokratije. Mi smo dobili dva epizoda koje ja zovem Landswap 1 i 2. Prvi se razvilo na nivo pregovora oko konačnog sveobuhvatnog sporazuma od 2017. do 2020. a drugi se odvija od prošle godine oko takozvane reforme izbornog zakona. Zašto kažem dramatično produbljivanje krize naše zapadne politike? Zato što od nekih malih ustupaka prema nacionalnim agendama i koncepcijama mi smo došli u jednu situaciju gdje najviši predstavnici pregovarači i Europske unije i SAD se stavi na vrh nekih pregovora, udovoljavanje nacionalističkih agenda, izdaje naših vrijednosti, naših prethodnih crvenih linija u koliziji za nacionalnim liderima. Protiv, to mora biti jasno, sigurnosnih interesa Europske unije u ovoj regiji. I to mimo, i to je bitno, od birokratskog autopilota na srednjem nivou hijerarhije mi smo dobili do naših pregovarača, najviših zvaničnih, gospođa Mogherini i njen tim, koji praktično privatizuje politiku Europske unije mimo predstavnica počevši od Berlina. To je dramatično.
Tu mislite na trojne pregovore?
Mislim na pregovore o razmjeni teritorija. I mislim na ovo što se u sjenci toga dešava u Bosni od zadnjih 2 godine. Drugi problemi koje smo dobili u tom periodu, unutar Europske unije, došao nam neprijatelj u samu kuću ispod kože. Znači, nismo imali samo problem sve veći za miješanjem iliberalnih država članica u politiku proširenja u cilju ulazak zemalja iz regije mimo demokratskih kriterija da bi proširio onaj kamp liberalnih država članica, nego novom komisijom iz 2011. i odlukom predsjednice komisije von der Leyen u stilu kao da nikad nije sjeo na kabinetskom stolu u Berlinu kod gospođe Merkel, pretvaranje obanovog čovjeka, komisara za politiku proširenja, zaista imati neprijatelje u kući. Jedan od najdramatičnijih rezultata, i neću ići kroz cijelu regiju sad, kroz svih 6 zemalja, jeste da gdje smo počeli odnos EU i Srbiju sa Vučićevom režimom 2012. i 2013. Počeli smo sa snagama iz 90-ih koji su se svoju politiku transformisali proevropski na početku i koji su pak manje više otvoreno priznali da je Kosovo otišlo do ove potpuno autoritarne, autokratske transformacije koje vidimo u toku onih 10 godina. Dešava nam se 24. februar i u ratu u Ukrajini. On je značajan jer on predstavlja po meni mogućnost window of opportunity za jednog preokreta. Zato što je to predstavlja nametnuto i moramo biti zahvalan predsjedniku Putinu, vraćanje Zapada odbrani liberalnog svjetskog poretka, zato što je to posle egzistencija pretnja za preživljavanje Europe. Dobili smo izvanrednu odluku na samitu u junu ove godine, dodjeljivanje kandidatskog statusa u Ukrajini. On jeste mimo kriterija uslova, ali mislim da je to bitno, i za ovu regiju. To je geopolitička i vrednostna odluka. Kažem, to je window of opportunity, možda za diskusiju to ostavljam, nažalost ne vidim u ona pola godine da je to već ima efekat na neku stratešku reorientaciju naše politike proširene prema ovoj regiji i konkretno vidite na jednom primjeru preporuka komisara Vahili da se dodijeli Bosni idući mjesec kandidatski status, što jeste upravo suprotno. To je lažna zlopotreba geopolitičkog argumenta sa jednom antivrednostnoj odlukom. Znači tu još uvijek postoji izuzetan jaz između onog momenta iz juna i mogućnost zaista vrednostnog preokreta, strateškog preokreta politike proširenja i nastavak stare, ja bih rekao čak i produbljavanje eskalacije stare, pogrešne, nestrateške, nevrednostno bazirane politike proširenja prema regiji. I zadnja tačka za diskusije kasnije, imamo jednu dilemu i to je dilema hipokrizije. Na jednoj strani imamo tu vrednostnu politiku, kao poziv vrednostne, deklarisanu vrednostnu politiku proširenja prema regiji. Na drugoj strani imamo zajedničku politiku Europske unije na polju azila i migracije, gdje mi svaki dan demonstriramo na vanjskoj granici, na balkanskoj ruti, da je ovdje na europskoj strani suspendirana i vladavina prava i ljudskih prava kroz politike sistematskog pushbackova i mislim da ćemo tu ogromnu štetu, vjerojatno se nećemo složiti o tome, Europske unije idući mjesec donijeti, kad ćemo donijeti pozitivnu odluku da uključimo i Hrvatsku i Rumuniju i Bugarsku u Schengen prostor na osnovu navodnog ispunjavanja svih uslova, uključujući zaštitu vanjskih granica na osnovu vladavine prava i poštivanja ljudskih prava.
Hvala gospodine Weber, kao i uvijek, nije nikako iznenađenje, veoma sadržajno i istovremeno pregledno sumiranje onoga što je posljednja dekada i po, decenija i po kontekstu odnosa Europske unije prema našem regionu. Jedno vrlo kratko potpitanje i nadam se veoma kratak i precizan vaš. Govorite o udovoljavanju regionalnim politikama koje su antievropske, prije svega one koje dolaze, nažalost, svih nas u regionu iz Republike Srbije i o februarskoj agresiji Ruske federacije na Ukrajinu. Da li je to taj appeasement, kako se to kaže na engleskom, prestao i da li on ima šansu da prestane, jer vidimo da postoje elementi koji opstaju u odnosu Evropske unije prema nama i nekih zemalja Evropske unije prema nama kada se radi o Srbiji i regionu. Vrlo kratko, pošto...
Da, bit ću puno kraće. Pa mislim da imamo novu igru što se tiče odnos i Berlina i Brisla prema Beogradu i Vučiću od 21. februara i to iz dva razloga. Jedan jeste zaista što taj pokušaj nastavak politike sjedine između dvije stolice koje je po meni na nivou propagande u Srbiji išla u jednom jasnom pravcu, nije manevrisanje više između dva pravaca. Ispitivanje javnog mnijenja u vezi podrške EU integracije to jasno pokazuje da je tu prestala to gledanje kroz prste. Ja to vidim u Brislu čak i do nivoa EPP-a, što je zaista bilo nezamišljivo do 21. februara. A drugo jeste da s odlaskom, to moram nažalost reći koliko da je zasluga imala za zadržavanje politike proširenja kancelarke Merkel, jer smo mi to tu se razvilo kroz onih 10 godina što ja zovem jedna nesretna, neplanirana simbioza između Merkel i Vučića, o kojoj to nažalost u svojoj zadnjoj posjeti u Beogradu svjedočilo izjava kancelarke Merkel na preskonferencije. Kancelarka na kraju više nije smogla snage za neki politički preokret. Mada znala bolje nego što je nastupila u javnoj sceni.
Hvala, istina je to i to se i drugima čini. Hvala vam puno, imamo veliko zadovoljstvo, naravno večeras da je sa nama i gospođa Fani Karanfilova, izvršna direktorica Fonda za otvoreno društvo iz Skoplja, iz Sjeverne Makedonije, uvijek moram sebe da načeram da kažem Sjeverna Makedonija, tako da očekujemo pogledi i sa vaših strana na teme kojima smo razgovarali, uključujući, tu bih želio da nas pri kraju vašeg prvog nastupa informišete o toj specifičnoj poziciji Sjeverne Makedonije u okviru otvorenog Balkana.
Dobro večer svima, drago mi je biti ovdje Zahvaljujem organizatorima ovog foruma na pozivu da učestvujem na ovom panelu večeras. Ja ću da pričam na engleskom. Pripremila sam nešto što sam planirala reći, odgovorit ću na vaše pitanje u okviru toga. I will thank you, Boro, for kind of a zoom out of the enlargement process and the position of the European Union towards the Western Balkans in the last decade and a half. I would go zoom in because my task was to give the Macedonian perspective. And I won't speak about the technical details about the negotiation because North Macedonia is not in a position yet to speak that much of the technical details of the process, which is, rather technical. But we are still in a phase where we need to make political decisions internally, but also the European Union has to make the final or the decision to let Macedonia in the second stage of the accession talks. So where we are currently, you all know that the first stage of the accession talks have been opened on 16th of July with the first intergovernmental conference, with which the explanatory and bilateral screening are taking part, with a notion that once the country adopts the constitutional changes by which the Bulgarians as a minority should be put in the preamble of the constitution, the second intergovernmental conference is going to be held and Macedonia is going to enter the actual stage of the accession talks. So how does all this reflect the society, the country, the government, the political actors? You know that the change of the constitution requires 2/3 majority in the parliament. The ruling majority controls 63 MPs. 2/3 majority means 80 MPs should vote for the amendments, which means that the opposition should go forward and support the changes. Actually, the government is put in a position now to secure the national consensus in which the opposition political parties will be involved and will be eventually supporting the change of the constitution. What the reality says, it is obvious that the opposition parties from the Macedonian political bloc are strongly against adopting the new changes of the constitution. The Albanian parties in opposition, although they support the idea of including Bulgarian minority into the preamble, they have another request saying that they would like, once the constitution is opened, they would like to see that this phrase saying 20% of the total population should be changed into Albanian population. All this, what does it signal? It signals that we are again in front of a political turmoil internally, which would add additional consequences upon the whole societal tissue when it comes to supporting the process of European integration, when it comes to support to the institutions and institutions, etc., etc. 2023 will be a very difficult year for North Macedonia, I would say. The government would have to face and should have to deliver effective measures that would prevent the citizens for further on impoverishment, which is caused by the post-COVID crisis, the energy economic crisis due to the Russian aggression over Ukraine, would have to deal with I would say, every day increasing Russian propaganda and disinformation, which take roots and undermine the democratic processes, but also hybrid attacks that we are facing recently in the last couple of weeks. And if we take into account that 2024 should be the election year, the pressure becomes even bigger. So I think that European Union I hope sees this, that our partners in EU but also in NATO understand this, because the country has made several courageous political decisions in the last 2 decades. I here think of the three historic agreements, the Ohrid Framework Agreement, the Prespa Agreement, and the bilateral agreement with Bulgaria, along with accepting the French proposal for the negotiation framework, which was a precedent in its kind to some extent. should understand that the process or the progress of the country, but also of other countries in the region, in the accession should be based on merit and only on merit. Because, as Boros said, what has made European Union lose its credibility when we speak about North Macedonia, it was that the merit base upon which is the layer of the European treaties, which is the layer of the establishment and founding the EU itself, has been actually lost. And when we speak about merit, we speak about delivering on reform agenda, not only when it comes to policy documents, but more specifically when it comes to implementation and to track record. Macedonia needs that. Me personally, my organization I represent, we have been strongly supporting, promoting all these courageous political decisions because we were the ones who thought that the values of interculturalism, multiculturalism, its uniqueness, good neighborly relations, integration into EU and NATO are the only vehicle that could secure a landlocked country like North Macedonia is, deliver on its stability, security, economic progress, reforms, etc. But that's not the case, unfortunately, with a vast portion of the population in the country, if not with the majority. Those people have lost their trust in the institutions, have lost their trust in integration processes. The societal tissue is divided, is teared apart. Large portion of those are young people, which make the things even more worrisome. So I must say I fully understand those people, although I do not agree with them. So they ask for tangible results on the road. They ask for a clear perspective, first and foremost, on the path towards EU. And second, and more importantly, they ask for tangible results and outputs that would change their quality of life, for which we are all aware could not happen tomorrow, could not happen immediately. Because the things were prolonged for so long, the reforms and the transformative power of EU actually hasn't delivered for a decade now. We are facing an urge that's out there for some time, which cannot meet tomorrow. So if it happens that the pace of the enlargement process is not accelerated at the maximum possible level, or even worse, if it happens that the accession process is by some other actions of member states, of EU itself, blocked or postponed due to the political issues, I think that the divided and wounded Macedonian society would very hard go further on. The Russian, and where we will be left, the Russian propaganda and the disinformation could take roots and to spread even further on. And then how we can expect that whatever national consensus which we inevitably need could happen to push the EU reform forward. So maybe I can go further on with, but it goes in the same line. It goes in the line that for a country like North Macedonia, non-alignment is not an option. So if it's not EU and NATO to whom we will stick, we have to choose, is it Euro-Asia? I mean, I speak about the atmosphere in the public and among the citizens. I don't speak about the political will of the government. The political will of the government has been expressed, of this recent one, for triple of times in the last 6-7 years. But the result or the effect of delivering or making compromises and afterwards being not awarded on the merit base has created a huge problem internally, which we have to face even if the EU accession continues. We have to have, because I spoke further on in my speech about this, the accession process needs to be transparent and needs to be inclusive of all strata in the society, because that's the only way how we can deliver as a society, meaning not only civil society, business sector, academia, the political opposition as well has to be on board. The EU has to deliver on its already adopted or already launched regional initiatives, like the Western Balkan Green Agenda, like the Regional Common Market, like the European Investment Plan, etc., etc. And you asked me about Open Balkans.
Yes, please.
I think the Open Balkans, if it has the potential to align to the policies EU stipulates, especially when it comes to the regional common market.
If I may, the problem is not if it does provide for. The problem is if it doesn't provide for European values and perspectives. That is actually the emphasis of the question. Because we know more or less what would do if it complies and it goes in sync with other European initiatives, then it's okay.
I understand. I think it can comply, that was my point, and complement the Berlin process, the common regional market, and all the regional initiatives. The problem is that the Open Balkans appeared as an initiative, as a counter thesis to the stalemate in the EU accession. That's a reality. So the EU accession, the Berlin process, the other regional initiatives were not delivering as much as necessary and needed for the citizens and for the countries. And I see the Open Balkans as kind of initiator, of incentive to somehow put this European integration process forward. But I think it could be made to be complementary and compliant, and should be. Otherwise, we will have problems when negotiating the chapters, when it comes to internal market and all other economic-related chapters. So, yeah.
Thank you very much indeed, Mrs. Karamfilova. That is true. There could be quite a clash between the two projections. Strangely and interestingly enough, the Russian Foreign Ministry would agree with the idea that since we have a stalemate on one side, the Open Balkans is quite a plausible and forward-looking initiative which they support openly and repeatedly, which actually lead us to our dear friend in Washington, D.C., Edward Joseph, our dear friend Ed, who was patiently waiting an hour or something. We have not breached the schedule. A lecturer and senior fellow at Johns Hopkins University, one of the most prominent American, if I may, experts on the Western Balkans. Looking forward to hear your 10 minutes, of course, and we shall start the second round of more brief interventions with the question with you, Ed. Please, take the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Vlahović, and i također gospodin Radulović, što ste mi pozvali. I ja ću morati biti kraći nego prethodni, jer ne samo zato vas pričam preko Zooma, nego što ja vas pričam iz televizijskih studio i ja ću morati napraviti jedan intervju uživo za nekoliko, recimo 20 minuta, jer ja ću samo na kratko dodati moje mišljenja o tim stvari. Ja sam zadnji koji govori na ovom panelu i ja bi se vratio na onaj prvi gost, gospodin Funke iz Bundestaga, iz Njemačke. Sad ću promijeniti na engleskom, može malo brže mogu objasniti moj tezi. So what he said, I think sums everything up in terms of the region, with the exception of what we just heard about North Macedonia, which is in a way connected. But if we just look at the rest of the region, basically, Mr. Funke of the Bundestag summed it all up. He said Serbia has to decide whether it wants to be in the EU, more or less. He said that. And the problem is Serbia doesn't need to decide. That's the problem. And we see every day the evidence of that. We see just this week, Russia today has opened a web portal in Serbia that by its own definition says that its mission will be to provide, quote, alternative perspectives on global events. I mean, this is happening today. this week in Serbia. So we see no indication that, unfortunately, Mr. Funke is right in theory, but not right in practice, because the perspective we have is from Belgrade is that they do not need to decide. That's every indication we have. And my basic thesis on this, and I had the pleasure to speak in Skopje recently, in Belgrade, it's really very straightforward. The world changed on February 24th, but the Balkans didn't change. And that's because Serbia didn't change. And I can add, the explanation is very simple why Serbia didn't change and why it continues not to change. And we put this, explained all of this, sorry for the lighting here. I'm in, there's a lot of light because of the television studio. But we explained this in a report back in January, SAIS and Wilson Center, called From Crisis to Convergence. And every day, to me, bears out our basic thesis. It's very simple. It's because of Kosovo. It's because of the leverage that Serbia retains on Kosovo. And so this question about the basic question you ask, and I'll come to Open Balkans and say a few words about that, Micho. But the overarching question here is somewhat artificial, the question about EU process. And yes, we can talk about these different mistakes of the EU, and they should have done this and they should have done that. But that's not, those are secondary in my view. The primary problem is there could be no progress in the Balkans towards the EU, even if you took away these problems in Brussels, even if you had the most forward-leaning and genuine attitude in Brussels and in EU capitals, as long as the largest country of the Western Balkan Six remains fundamentally opposed to the Western order for the region. And again, maybe before the 24th of February, you could say, well, we need to give them a chance, and maybe we'll try a few more things. But no one can say that now, because that's what the meaning of the whole Putin challenge to the European Union and to the U.S. This is not a moment where ambivalence, certainly in Europe, can be tolerated. And we see, again, there's no indication that we have. People keep talking about, oh, well, Serbia can't sustain this. But the indications that we have is Alexander Vučić believes he can sustain this. Let's not forget what happened in New York in late September. Serbia signed basically a friendship pact Russia in the person of Sergei Lavrov, who, by the way, is personally sanctioned. So not just with Russia, but with Lavrov, notorious figure, personally sanctioned, signed this agreement in New York in front of a global UN audience. And then here's the kicker. Serbia did this after Vučić had met separately with Jake Sullivan and then Victoria Nuland. So if President Vučić feels this confident and suffered essentially no consequences for that, other than some protests and objections that were communicated to him, but essentially suffered no consequences for that, has suffered no consequences for not putting on sanctions, and not just not putting on sanctions, but actively promoting Russian narratives. And you just heard the speaker from North Macedonia speak about that non-alignment is not an option, and it isn't, of course, in North Macedonia, and the dangers that they face if they're not able to move forward. So this is, to me, this is not this complicated morass of problems, and that's what we explained all that in our report. And I think, again, as Zlatko Vujovic put it very well about in Montenegro, the difficulty, this political crisis in Montenegro is largely, as Zlatko explained, a product of the dominant influence, as he put it there, of your neighbor. And and again, as Zlatko put it exactly correctly, you had a prime minister, Dimitar Nabazovic, who was in a position to be a historic unifier, who said he would be a unifier and move the country forward into the EU. And of course, it had this great opportunity. Again, another reason why I don't look at Brussels as all the explanation for all of these issues, because Montenegro has a genuine pathway to the European Union. It's not an option. Every European Union official that I've spoken to insists that there is an open pathway for Montenegro. This is a small country, and if it could move forward and tackle these remaining obstacles and complete the chapters, it actually could get into the European Union, which would have a dramatic effect on the rest of the region. And of course, Alexander Vučić knows this and understands this. And for reasons that he can best explain, doesn't seem to want that progress there. We can also talk, Bosnia-Herzegovina, about the complexities there. But again, the only future for Bosnia-Herzegovina is achieved once Republika Srpska accepts that indeed a functional and Bosnia-Herzegovina is in its interests. And that won't happen as long as Serbia is in the state that it's in. So, and then finally, let's not forget, of course, the brewing, completely artificial crisis in Kosovo. And I understand many people will point the finger at Albin Kurti, and he is reckless and he is intransigent. And he's a very difficult guy, and he has his responsibility. But let's not forget some of the facts here. Miroslav Lajcak has been working on this issue even before a year ago, September, and has put forward a number of ways that this license plate issue could be resolved. And I should add here that according to Deputy Prime Minister Vesnik Bislimi, Kosovo has offered to formally stipulate in the agreement on license plates that the use of license plates is not Serbian recognition of Kosovo. It's offered to explicitly state that. And we have other examples. The great irony is this license plate crisis, they're just supposedly out of concern for Kosovo Serbs, takes place during a key moment in the trial over the murder of Alira Ivanovic. Yes. And key witnesses, Serbian witnesses, who want to testify or have testified in the murder of this Kosovo Serb, get mortal threats from Serbs, other Serbs. And according to Rada Trajkovic, her quote, she points the finger at Vučić himself on this topic. So again, there's this artificial nature to this whole continuing unnecessary drama in the Balkans more than 2 decades after the last fighting. And again, as we explained in detail in our report in January, there's a very clear source about this. And unfortunately, the U.S. and EU don't want to tackle that source, and in the way that we explained that's plausible and pragmatic and could address this, which is by eroding Serbia's leverage over Kosovo, the leverage that it exploits not just over Kosovo, but to destabilize the region and to continue its relationship and support for Russia at a moment when this is completely intolerable. So that's where it is. Let me quickly just say something. I'm looking at the clock
because
here. Because
I have a question at the end for you.
Please. Sure. I just, you see behind me I have to say this because you see the picture of the Capitol. We just had our incredibly important midterm elections here, and I just need to convey, because it's relevant for the Balkans, it's relevant for the world, the dramatic sense of relief in this country from all those who, including Republicans, I should say, who care about the United States remaining on a democratic path and being a support to countries in the Balkans and elsewhere that pursue democracy and believe that there's an American role in partnership with its allies and European Union partners. I just cannot emphasize enough the relief from these elections. Mitro, please.
Yes, the relief is mutual, and I believe I share the opinion of most of the people here, our friends in the hall, in the room. One question add. Also in the context of the Open Balkans. The Press and State Department continues to push it in a way which is, in most of the cases, not so visible or understandable on the European side of the story. Do you see, and what are actually the specific elements of discrepancy which, volens nolens, whether we want it or not, exists now in between the US policy in the Western Balkans and the European one? Especially in the context of the Open Balkans vis-a-vis the other European initiatives.
Okay, so Mitro, very briefly on this, and hopefully people are familiar with my views on this and the risks that I've pointed out about Open Balkans, and we saw some movement from in the U.S. Towards the Berlin process in the run-up to it, and we saw. Excuse me, Gabriel Escobar gave an interview in Kosovo on the 19th of October where he downplayed Open Balkans and gave a new emphasis, here's a quote, on regional initiatives that are compliant with the Berlin process. And look, we're still in November 3rd. Germany hosted a very successful Berlin process. Vučić sent Ana Brnabić there. He didn't want to show up in a forum in which Kosovo would be treated as an equal. But nonetheless, this was a breakthrough. It proved beyond any doubt that the Berlin process is as Chancellor Scholz said it would be, revived, that Germany would invest in this. They did. There was a strong effort politically to make this summit a success. And right now, it's up for the U.S. to recognize Vučić for who he is and to understand that any platforms that depart from EU values and the accession criteria are in and of themselves dangerous. And just to mention to our colleague from North Macedonia, I think this also is not in Macedonian interest. Look, there's no. We understand from Macedonians that their more imminent dangers come from Bulgaria, not from Serbia. But Serbia is no friend of the EU aspirations for the region. And so ultimately, even for North Macedonia, this is not a winner there. And what is, so that's my hope. My hope is that the U.S. will do the only logical thing, which is get behind the Berlin process and work with Germany and the U.K. To support it and to make sure it doesn't, the same doesn't happen as before, where initial energy then dissipates. That's the role that the U.S. should play. And quickly, let me say something here about North Macedonia, and I take completely, having spent a fair amount of time there, I just would repeat my proposal from in foreign policy back in June, that the U.S. can play, and so can individual European Union states, not the EU, but individual European Union states and the UK, can follow a U.S. lead here and affirmatively support, acknowledge, recognize the Macedonian identity, as the U.S. can do under its strategic partnership. It can do that. Cultural issues, cultural matters are part of it. As I've learned discussing with senior Macedonian officials, an array of them, and as well, whether Macedonian or ethnic Albanian, this would have quite a significant impact, and it would be a signal to Sofia as well about the limits to its approach on abusing its position as an EU member to extort or to create a monopoly on history, and as it's trying to do. So I have to sign off now. But
Thank you very much. You have the congratulations also from North Macedonia, as we can hear, with a good reason. They say hope dies the last, so we can only cautiously hope that Mr. Escobar and Ambassador Hill and their superiors will change their attitude towards the regime in Belgrade in foreseeable future. Or should I have said, President Vučić himself. Gospodine Aleksiću, da nastavimo sa vama vrlo jednostavnim pitanjem. Neću vas naravno mučiti da nam detektujete razlike između vaše stranke i Srpske narodne stranke kada se radi o otvorenom Balkanu, jer smo uvjereni da postoje i da su kredibilne, nego nam recite, molim vas, ukoliko vam to ne predstavlja sad neki posebni napor, kako vi iz vaše stranke gledate na različite stavove koje dolaze iz ove 3 regionalne zemlje koje nisu spremne još uvijek da budu dio otvorenog Balkana, dakle Bosna i Hercegovina, Kosovo i Crna Gora. Da li su njihovi razlozi, za kojem pretpostavljam, to je siguran sam da ste čuli, da li su oni kredibilni vama i kako se vi odnosite prema njima, uključujući onaj koji zastrašujuće zvuči, a nije da nema veze sa realnošću koji se zove, koji definiše otvoreni Balkan kao surogat ili drugo ime za takozvani srpski svet?
Dosta je rečeno o poziciji Srbije i, nažalost, o režimu Srpske napredne stranke je uticaj koji vrši na druge zemlje u regionu i, nažalost, čuli smo da je taj uticaj potencijalno vrlo opasan, ali moram s tim uvezi da kažem da to za nas nije ništa novo. Dakle, to kakav je režim Srpske napredne stranke jednog čoveka, radi se zapravo o jednom čoveku, mi vidimo 10 godina sistematski je uništavan politički sistem. U Srbiji 10 godina imali smo gotovo stalnu izbornu kampanju, 6 izbornih ciklusa u tih 10 godina. Nijedna vlada nije uspela pun mandat da izdrži. Preko 130 ministara je promenjeno i naravno samo jedan čovek.
Uključujući, dozvolite mi malu upadicu jer moramo se vratiti mom pitanju, uključujući promjene vlade u susjednim zemljama pod uticajem tih vlada iz Srbije. U šalu i uz malo zbilja, ali recite nam zaista, da li se vama u Beogradu čini kredibilnim ovo što u Sarajevu, Podgorici i u Prištini govore o izvjesnim nedoumicama, zazorima i nesigurnostima koji su vezane za projekcije unutar takozvanog otvorenog Balkana?
Ja apsolutno, naša pozicija je da apsolutno možemo da razumemo te i nedoumice i sumnje. Odmah da kažem, dakle svaka saradnja u regionu je dobra i mi smo imali desetine inicijativa u prethodnim decenijama, ali ne može ni jedna od tih inicijativa, a naročito ne otvoreni Balkan, da zameni ono što treba da bude naš prioritet, a to su evrointegracije. I apsolutno mi je jasno zašto su sumnjičavi, jer i mi smo prema jednoj inicijativi koju određeni lideri pretenduju da privatizuju. A čini se da je ova inicijativa upravo takva. Dakle, potrebna je otvorena saradnja. Mi imamo i dalje more otvorenih pitanja posle 20 ili 30 godina nakon završetka ratnih sukoba ovde. Mi dalje brojna otvorena pitanja nismo rešili, i pitanje sukcesije, i pitanje ratnih zločina, i pitanje nestalih, i pitanje granice. I sve će nas to sačekati sutra ili preko sutra u ovom procesu evropskih integracija. Ili berlinski proces ili neki drugi proces treba u stvari da bude iskorišćen da se uspostavi dobar put, da se ta otvorena pitanja zatvore, a još jednom kažem, otvoreni Balkan ne može da bude nikakva zamena za evropske integracije i ne može da se privatizuje. I u tom smislu potpuno razumem sumnje koje dolaze od strane drugih zemalja iz regiona, zato što dolaze i od nas kao opozicionih stranaka.
Hvala vam puno. Sada ste upravo vrlo lapidarno i precizno nabrojali razlike koje se mogu detektovati u vašoj politici u odnosu na vladajuću, politici vaše stranke. Da iskoristim priliku da pozdravimo vašeg predsjednika koji je, ako se ne varam, još uvijek na čelu služba u Crnoj Gori kao ambasador. Mada je i sam iz Crne Gore, iz Berana. Hvala vam puno, gospodine Aleksiću. Nastavljamo u ovom završnom, vrlo lapidarnom, kratkom segmentu sa gospodinom Vujovićem i sa mojim pitanjem koji pobjegao na nepoznatima navoda gospodin Ed Joseph. Kako se vama čini da će se razvijati stvari sa otvorenim Balkanom i da li je američka administracija aktuelna spremna da zaista i suštinski koriguje svoje stavove oko toga, s jedne strane, i s druge strane, da li vi, gospodine Vujoviću, dragi Zlatko, detektujete razlike između onoga što je pristup Brisela s jedne i pristup Vašingtona s druge strane vezano na Zapadni Balkan?
Dobro, ja sam stvarno imao prilike sad skoro, znači pred summit u Berlinu, da budem u Berlinu i da razgovaram sa određenim ljudima iz njihove administracije i takođe i ono što je stvarno ohrabrujuće jeste da je njemačka administracija nakon jednog zastoja, kada sam imao prilike da razgovaram sa kancelarkom Merkel koja je u svojoj oproštajnoj posjeti Zapadnom Balkanu bila, ona se sastala sa 6 lidera civilnog sektora i ja sam bio jedan od njih predstavljajući Crnu Goru. I ona je tada rekla, kada je govorila oko berlinskog procesa, rekla je da će razgovarati sa budućim premijerom, tada kancelarom Scholzom, da će tražiti od njega podršku, ako ne od njega, onda od predsjednice Evropske komisije da se sačuva ideja berlinskog procesa, jer je ona na neki način bez alternative za Zapadni Balkan. I ono što je rezultiralo nakon izvjesnog vremena jeste da je i kancelar Scholz preuzeo tu ideju, preuzeo taj projekat i da nakon posljednjeg samita u Berlinu više je nego jasno da je Njemačka u potpunosti stala iza toga procesa. Ono što se desilo u Berlinu jeste potpisana su 3 sporazuma koje su potpisale svih 6 zemalja Zapadnog Balkana i čini mi se da je to nešto na čemu i veoma principijelno insistira američka administracija, da su poželjne sve one integracije na Zapadnom Balkanu koje podrazumijevaju učešće svih 6 država. I mislim da je berlinski proces, ali ne samo berlinski proces, nego cijeli niz drugih projekata, uključujući Regional Cooperation Council, koji je, ako je suditi prema onome što je meni rečeno, u stvari predstavljao ključnu motornu snagu koja je kreirala ova 3 dokumenta, koja su u okviru Otvorenog Balkana usvojena, pa su sad ponovo usvojena u okviru berlinskog procesa. Razlika jeste velika, potpisalo je 6 zemalja, a ne 3 zemlje kao u slučaju Otvorenog Balkana. I čini mi se da sa ovim aktiviranjem berlinskog procesa na neki način se dobija ono što je potrebno Zapadnom Balkanu. Nama je svima, govorim zemljama članicama koje funkcionišu na Zapadnom Balkanu, ovih 6 zemalja, nama je potrebno vodstvo. Nama je potrebno da se ugledamo na zemlje koje imaju razvijenu vladavinu prava, a ne nikako da Srbija predvođena Vučićem bude lider u ovome procesu. Zašto to govorim? Zato što zemlje toliko zaostaju u procesu evropskih integracija. Mi smo govorili oko nekih pitanja kao što je fitosanitarna zaštita, pa je Crna Gora usvojila toliko propisa, 5000 propisa smo usvojili i sada trebamo da se uklopimo u Otvoreni Balkan, da poništimo i stavimo van snage propise koje smo uskladili sa Evropskom unijom da bi se prilagodili Otvorenom Balkanu. Znači, mi trčimo unazad, umjesto da poguramo sve da idu naprijed i da se mi nađemo na standardima Evropske unije kojima svima težimo, nas se traži da idemo nazad. Pa, izvinite, ja sam neko ko je pristalica, nema kompromisa kada je riječ o evropskoj integraciji, nema kompromisa o tim standardima, nama je mjesto u Evropskoj uniji. Ako bi Otvoreni Balkan mogao da to podstakne, ubrza, ja bi bio za njega, ali ja ne vidim apsolutno nikakvu komparativnu prednost Otvorenog Balkana u odnosu, recimo, na berlinski proces, u odnosu na ono što nam sve daje. Evo, druga stvar, Otvoreni Balkan je po meni jedan, da kažemo, pokušaj ribrendiranja prije svega Srbije i postavljanja Srbije na nekakvo zajedno sa Albanijom, na nekakve ključne 2 zemlje koje imaju ključni uticaj na Zapadnom Balkanu. Međutim, nama to ne treba. Nama treba jednostavno da mi ispunimo što prije uslove za članstvo u Evropskoj uniji i da ne gubimo vrijeme. Razumijem interese Srbije. Srbija je sputana slučajem Kosova. Istina, to je na neki način manifestacija mnogo većih problema sa kojima se Srbija suočava, a koji su unutrašnje karakter odnosa sa Rusijom. Čini mi se da je na neki način slučaj Kosova i bjekstvo, zatvaranje očiju, odnosno neke probleme sa kojima se ne može suočiti. Ali tih problema nema Crna Gora. i ne trebamo mi da pravimo društvo onima koji će dugo biti u čekaonici, nego treba da iskoristimo šansu kao što smo je propustili u ovom prethodnom periodu, jer je naš premijer bio više oduševljen splavovima nego dosadnim sastancima u Briselu.
Hvala Zlatko, sad je jasno zašto je Zlatko moj omiljeni analitičar. Meni je drago da je ovdje u publici koja je vrlo strpljiva, da su i naši dragi prijatelji iz političkog udjeljenja američke ambasade i da oni će prenijeti, kao što im je dužnost, ovo što se čuje ovdje o onom segmentu upliva Sjedinjenih država na političke i druge bezbjednosne prilike u našim zemljama, na Zapadnom Balkanu. Gospodine Weber, kako se vama čini ova synchronicity ili nedostatak sinkronizacije između Vašingtona i Brisela, ako je, bar nam je to istorija, čak i ovih neveselih 15 godina koji ste pomenuli, uvijek bilo značajno za sve nas na Balkanu, da postoji ipak jedan temeljno razumijevanje i saradnje između Vašingtona i Brisela kada se radi o našem dijelu Evrope.
Mislim da treba razriješiti neke nejasnoće oko Open Balkan i Berlinskog procesa i odnosa. Sa Berlinskim procesom smo mi dobili jedan napredak u regionalnoj saradnji. Posle 15 godina od pakta stabilnosti gdje su nam bili puna usta priče o regionalnoj saradnji, možda nekoj računu, nekih 40 plus nekih regionalnih fora, nismo imali pomak u regionalnoj saradnji. I to iz dva razloga. Znači, bila su dva neformalna elementa iza Berlinskog procesa koji su njega činili suštinskom. Jedan jest oživljavanje neformalne skupine država članica predvođenim Evropske unije, predvođenim kancelarkom Merkel, izdizanje politike proširenja, perspektive članstva i zamora od proširenja. To je prva stvar. Drugo jeste normalizaciji ličnih odnosa između premijera i predsjednika regije na osnovu političkog dijaloga i uspostavljanje normalnih sastanaka između političkog vodstva u Prištini i Beogradu. Berlinski proces prije uzdizanja Open Balkan kao prvo mini Schengen je pao u krizu i upravo iz ta dva razloga. Ono što sam ranije rekao, gubljenje u prevodu perspektive članstva i na drugoj strani potpuno pogoršanje odnosa između premijera i predsjednika na osnovu, hvala Bogu, neuspjele epizode pregovaranja o razmjeni teritorija. Znači, to je ubilo berlinski proces tu negdje 18. 19. Kad su se pojavili, kad je zamah dobio mini Schengen, on je dobio zamah i tu najviše razumem perspektivu Skopje na osnovu oktobra 2018. Makrovo ne otvaranje pretpristupnih pregovora. Znači, iz perspektive tog opravdanog razočarenja za Europskom unijom, sasvim je razumljivo podršku jednom projektu koji je suštinski i po substancije copy-paste od Regional Common Market. On nema ništa dodatno. Znači, to je potpuno razumljivo bilo. Međutim, treba dodati jedan detalj. U Bijeloj kući u septembru 2020. na pregovorima koji su vodili do Washingtonskog sporazuma na osnovu genijalne uloge slavnog Richarda Grenella, taj projekat je pretvoren u anti-merkelski i anti-njemački projekt. Zašto? Za jednog detalj. Grenell je do samog dana potpisivanja tog sporazuma kancelamt obećao da će oni tamo u taj sporazum uključiti berlinski proces. I šta se našla na dan tamo? Open Balkan. Znači, problem, ja bih rekao, inicijalne opravdanosti tog paralelnog konkurencijskog projekta Open Balkan se tu izgubio na toj strani i na drugoj strani se izgubio, on je upravo patio u vodstvo od strane Tirane i još više Beograda od onoga što je berlinski proces patio. I to je ono preokret antievropski koji je Vučić napravio na domaćem demokratskom planu, što je napravio u regionalnoj politici. Tu se sjeti prvobitne proevropske regionalne bilateralne politike za strane od Dodika išao u Sarajevo, to je kod Tadića nije bio zamišljivo, i onda preokret u neku politiku koju ja mislim da je malo površno se poveze za vraćanjem memoranduma SANU i tako dalje. Mislim da je to vraćanje i to moram reći ne samo u Beogradu, nego i u Tirani, konceptu oca nacije, regionalnog koncepta. Znači, sami nositelji projekta, makar 2 od 3, ne Skopje, su postali akteri podjele regije. Znači, ono što je kočilo berlinski proces je bio ugrađen u srž Open Balkan. Drugi detalj, rekao sam, gospođa Merkel više na kraju nije smogla snaga za razne preokrete, nije smogla snaga da se svađa sa predsjednikom Macronom, što je prva greška, drugo je oko Vučića, a treća jeste na zadnjem samitu u Berlinu prošle godine. Kancler Amt je probao, a nije uspjelo da nagovara i Vučića i Ramu da vraća Open Balkan pod kišobran berlinskog procesa. Nisam siguran da nova njemačka vlada, dobra je stvar što je dinamizirala, ponovo uživala berlinski proces i ove 3 sporazume, mada bi tu imao i neke određene kritike, ali neću ulaziti u detalje sad. Nismo rešili one 3 osnove, 2 osnova na kojem počiva berlinski proces. Unatoč toga ima napretku. Mislim da nije našla odgovor i nisam siguran da su dovoljno strateški već tražili. Na onaj izazov iz Beograda i Tirani za koji stoji Washington. I stoji u jednom smislu u kojem, ja to moram reći, nažalost, mi smo svi puno iščekivali kad je Trump otišao od Bidenove administracije. Ja preko Bosne i Open Balkan vidim više kontinuiteta za Trumpovom regionalnom politikom nego diskontinuitetu, ali to sad na stranu. Mislim da će morati posle ovoga uspjeha. Imam utisak da je nada u Berlinu, nada umire zadnji, kao što ste rekli, da kroz napredak u berlinskom procesu će prirodno odumirati Open Balkan. Ja ne vjerujem da će se to desiti, upravo zbog te zloupotrebe od strane Tirane, pogotovo u Beogradu, tako da ja vjerujem da će morati doći do nekakvog sporazuma između Berlina i Washingtona. Da li je to neka podjela rada, da li je to neka integracija u Open Balkan, mislim da na kraju krajeva nije bitno, ali sve dok imate paralelne procese i nesklad između, kao što ste vi spomenuli, transatlantski nesklad, to mi vidimo već 3 decenije u regiji. Vladari u regiji su vrlo dobro da iskoristite neki nesklad i neki politički i moći za svoje interese i to je upravo ono što se dešava.
Vrlo vam hvala. Vaše posljednje riječi su zapravo mogu da budu i jedna od najznačajnijih poruka ovog našeg panela. Dozvolit ćete mi da gospođi Karanfilovoj, Mrs. Karanfilova, if you were asked now abruptly to actually make a final statement on behalf of all of us towards both Washington and Brussels, what would be your brief message concerning the Western Balkans, European integration, and the
put all the
synchronicity?
efforts of the both administration for the European accession to succeed for those countries. So put the efforts of both administrations in Washington and Brussels for the European accession and membership, full-fledged membership for those countries to succeed within a course of 5 to 6 years. That would be my message.
Thank you very much. We full-heartedly agree with you. And hvala vam svima. Malo smo prekoračili s vremenom, ali nismo sa sadržajem. Tako da imam veliko zadovoljstvo. Hvala gospodinu Aleksiću, gospođi Karanfilovoj, gospodinu Weberu, ovima koji su bili sa nama, gospodinu Bujoviću.
Thank you.
Hvala.